I'm standing in this briefing room right now. There is no government official here.
You fellas want to read me my rights?
You have the right to remain silent. You have the right to have your face kicked in by me. You have the right to have your balls stomped by him.
Hey, you're really trying to be accurate.
I'll waive my rights.
But I'll say that the press is not the enemy of the people.
What's your name, scumbag?
But I'll say that the press is not the enemy of the people. The press is not the enemy of the people. The press is not the enemy of the people.
They came in peace.
Maybe we should go out on Pennsylvania Avenue like these folks who chant CNN sucks and fake news. Maybe we should go out, all journalists should go out on Pennsylvania Avenue and chant, we're not the enemy of the people. We're not the enemy of the people. We're not the enemy of the people. We're not the enemy of the people.
This could be a cultural misunderstanding.
This is CNN.
Excuse me.
Your balls are showing.
Well, good evening, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, and all you ETs out there on the bite waves of the internet and wherever you're at down through time monitoring this show. I'm Gary Legier, the Mars Revealer, known also as the Mad Martian, and I would like to welcome you all to the Martian Revelation that is upon you all again now. And today is September 1st of 2018, or the 2nd, depending upon your time zone, that you're hearing this broadcast, and you're listening to this broadcast through www.lnmradionetwork.com. Where the shield of L&M is the symbol of truth and also your defense for the war which we all fight against the evil dark missioners out there, and to bring you the truth one show at a time. L&M Radio Network is also 100% listener supported, so if you're a listener, please help support shows like The Martian Revelation and the many others you would also enjoy listening to through L&M, as it is because of you, the listener, of which makes The Martian Revelation possible even to be brought to you all back through time. And let us not forget also because of the balls of Michael Vara of Late Night in the Midlands radio show. So please click subscribe on lnmradionetwork.com and please share the link, and please also donate to the network to allow it to continue being here for you, especially to bring you the Martian Revelation. But remember, the added benefit is also, plus you will be protected by the shield of the L&M Radio Network, where the shield of L&M, again, is the standard and the symbol of the truth and the light. Especially as we fight the war against those evil dark missioners who are leading you all away from the light and manipulating you all instead to help you open your wallets and pocketbooks to only allow them more power for the dark side to continue to lie and to mislead you all and steer you away from the truth that they themselves not wish to face or even admit to. As listeners to this show could appreciate, we all know in certain UFO diaries and certain Faces of Mars images that connect directly to certain dark missioners out there that are doing exactly that, steering you away from the truth, in which they not even want to face or admit to themselves. So your listenership and your donation support counts, and it helps us all not only to fight, but to win against those evil dark missioners, as well as to secure a future which we all could literally make and will make the Martian Revelation our reality. By what? By changing our fate. That's right. So please donate today and become part of the Martian Militia. Just remember also that if you're listening to this Martian Revelation show, again on www.lnmradionetwork.com, then know that you are the resistance. And we got an interesting show tonight, and our guest is going to be Greg Orme. But before all that, let's check out this news from an article from space.com by Leonard David, dated yesterday, August 31st, that stated, life on Mars? 40 years later, Viking lander scientist still says yes. In 1976, NASA's twin Viking landers touched down on Mars in an attempt to answer a weighty question. Is there life on the red planet? You know, again, listeners to this show could appreciate, or maybe not appreciate, since the Dr. Gil Levin's Martian Revelation Life Validation Campaign petition is now over. But that's okay, because this continues on, and this story is especially relevant. Because it was timed after the petition was ended that Leonard David decided to put this article out, and I have it on from inside knowledge that Leonard David also knew of my attempts at this campaign for Dr. Gill, as well as the petition. So is it a coincidence that Mr. Leonard David waits for the petition to be officially over for the public signing? You know, it's all been trying to be covered up, even the numbers of the people that signed. I am convinced that that website has been changing the numbers, as well as also many of the people that have been signing it have not been going to their emails to click on email and click on to validate the petition signature. But lo and behold, it's going to come back. So, Leonard David, it's not like you beat me in any race or anything, because this is just the beginning. And like you heard at the beginning of the show, my balls are to the wall. So you didn't beat me or any of us at anything that wants this answered and that wants those experiments of Dr. Gil Levin to be placed on board those next Mars rovers of Mars Rover 2020, as well as we want to pursue ESA also in asking them to including aboard their ExoMars Rover 2020 to look for life, not just looking for signs of possible life, but actual life. Back to the article. Gilbert Levin was the principal investigator of the Vikings labeled release, the LR Light Detection Experiment. The instrument got positive responses at both landing locales of where the Viking landers landed. 4,000 miles apart, there was a twin pair, and both of them did dual twin tests, which all of them validated and vindicated each other's results of finding and detecting life. Anyway, the article continues. However, scientists did not reach a consensus on whether his results were proof of life. Let's put the brakes on that. Let's tell him why, Leonard David. Because NASA got pissed off at the findings that they detected life because they sent it all to a world, scamming the public out of their money with the hopes and dreams of looking for life, to only put the kibosh on it because it actually detected it. Otherwise, that experiment would not have been there. They were looking for signs of Darwinian evolution after that point, trying to prove it as if they were able to prove it here on Earth. They failed. Then they have never done so. Nor have they ever replicated using the other, excuses here on Earth, claiming that chemical responses produces the signatures, the false signatures of life that could be mimic life. Again, bull! So, let's keep things in perspective. Dr. Gil Levin was ordered by NASA not to reveal that his detection experiments, controlled labeled release experiments, detected life. No, they ordered him instead to claim that it may have detected signs of possible life. You know, the turtleneck pace speed we've been going at ever since. And every drip, drip, drip big announcement always has that cliche added to it. The signs of possible life. Big deal. We want those tests validated and vindicated from back in 1976. Leonard David is only following the control policy agenda-driven drivel of what the facts are, and he's not telling you it, because he would be fired. I mean, let's call bullshit what it is. No offense, Mr. Leonard David. Your balls ain't up against the wall and your free speech ready to be violated because you signed your contracts away allowing yourself to do that yourself in order to get the money of the hand that feeds you. But the article continues. So the scientists did not reach a consensus on whether his results were proof of life. Shit. In 1997, Dr. Levin concluded that the experiment had indeed detected life on Mars, and he has championed that viewpoint ever since. Let alone being, again, told outright in 1976 not to release to the public his findings. So he had to go about other things and wait as time progresses to do it scientifically. And now, more than 4 decades after the Viking landings, and with a lot more information about Mars in hand, Levin believes that NASA hasn't properly followed up on the Viking landers' results. And he's correct. We've had him on this show detailing that. And we hope to be able to do another show with him here again soon. I got to call him and set something up so where Daryl and I and L&M Radio Network can help provide a pre-recorded show with him to be aired for the show at this time. In your time zone, wherever you're hearing this broadcast. So, but Dr. Gil Levin states, I am certain that NASA knows there is life on Mars. He said this past July on David Livingston's popular online program, The Space Show. Oh, that's great of you, Mr. Leonard David. After knowing of the fact of where he spent more time on my show, The Martian Revelation, speaking about exactly what the history was in his history and describing those tests to the T. So, we understand you can't mention me. My balls are to the wall. We understand. But the article continues. Levin called for a re-examination of Viking labeled release data by an objective panel. And he still does to this day. He said that on my show. Why didn't he reflect back again to my show again? Because my balls are to the wall. He had to wait to put out this article till after the petition was over so he could skirt around playing down like any knowledge he had, any knowledge of it. But over the past 40 years, a succession of orbiters, landers, and rovers has gathered evidence that life exists on Mars today, Levin said. Again, he's right. But only those signs of possible life, because none of those experiments ever since can detect any life. Like Dr. Gill said again on the Martian revelation, that every time he submitted proposals to be put forth for any landers and rovers, he was immediately slammed down and denied those proposals, and even told outright, do not submit any. We don't want them. They also sent the last one home to him in a cab. Never mind the mail. It's like they didn't want to even register it that it was proposed. So they sent it home in a cab to Dr. Levin. Unopened. Rejected. Now think about that, people. This is a continual cover-up since 1976 that's been keeping you all on the line over signs of possible life with each big public so-called announcement. And what does it give us? Signs of possible life. We don't care anymore. We want the life detection experiments. We want to know and validate those tests from 1976 that proven life was there. Why doesn't NASA want to do this? Because they, like Dr. Gil Levin said again on the Martian revelation, that they would be made to feel embarrassed, especially since you balls to the wallers out there that Leonard David does not appreciate of you listeners. He does not appreciate the fact that you all would like that validation and vindication also. That's right. So it's no surprise and high suspect that Leonard David waits to put out his article after the fact the petition ends, and me also knowing and seeing how numbers digress from refreshing the page at times where there was many more and then it goes back down to 30, 40, 50, just like they're doing all over the internet as described at the beginning of this show, where the media is not our enemy, they claim. They work for those keeping the control policy agendas of suppression of life on Mars. It's those people that control those media people that are controlling NASA that did what they did to Dr. Gil Levin in 1976 and what they're still doing to us all now because, again, it's a scam. They've been ripping you off when they detected life already. And you heard it. They sent it home in a cab. They're trying to cover up their tracks. They don't want it in the public record. So when it's shown, hey, why haven't you, added those experiments? Well, no one submitted proposals. Really, Dr. Gil Levin? Oh, that's okay. He's not adequate. He's not a real scientist. He thinks life is on Mars. You do everything to blackball him and make him look bad when NASA's the ones that came to him. You see the problem here? But I just thought I'd read this article and let Leonard David know and others know that this is bull. So all of our balls are to the wall for those that are angry about this, about all these things going on, because it's all connected to continue to mislead us and lie to us. But anyway, back to the article. Levin calls for a re-examination of Viking labeled release data by an objective panel. But there's more. Over the past 40 years, a succession of orbiters, landers, and rovers has gathered evidence that life exists on Mars today, Levin said, to reiterate. And there is substantial and circumstantial evidence for extant microbial life on Mars, he said, on the space show. Again, as well as the Martian revelation, this Leonard David's really pissing me off. I see through his game of bullshit. And the listeners to this show can appreciate, I think, that comment and may also possibly agree. There's too many coincidences going on here, and all these listeners know that this has been a big pushed event for Dr. Gil Levin. Now, Mr. Leonard David's trying to look like he's all out for Dr. Gil Levin? Bullshit! Back to the article, methane spikes. As an example, Dr. Levin noted that NASA's Curiosity rover has found cyclical and seasonal spikes in Mars's methane. More than 90% of the methane in Earth's atmosphere now is generated by microbes and other organisms. That's right. That would leave only 10% for any volcanic or any chemical processes that they claim but never proved duplicates light signatures on Earth. So, if that being the case on Mars, that more than 90% of the methane in our atmosphere is generated by microbes and other organisms, then what's the dominant seasonal periodic release of methane on Mars? Again, like Earth, how much of that 100% is biological? You see? And that's why Dr. Gillivan states that this is really hard to ignore as evidence for life. And he's right. But they have, because of the control policy that NASA had in place, even upon their own scientists, science be damned, because of the control of it. Only to lead us to signs of possible life. Oh, they jumped the gun. They didn't expect to find it there in 1976. We cannot be so elaborate in sending our experiments anymore, because now we know that it's there, but we'll cover that up. We'll pretend that didn't happen. We'll destroy Dr. Gillivan's credibility amongst other mainstream scientists. However, water rock chemistry can also produce methane, so it's not persuasive evidence of life. Curiosity mission team members and other scientists have said, okay, that releases periodically like life. Prove it here on Earth, that it would take up the 90% of on Mars, rather than a possible life, or even the 100%, because the first you guys didn't even want to believe that life was even existing there, that it couldn't. Now you guys are trying to cover your asses, okay? And it ain't working. And Leonard David, you're only being complicit to the cover-up of the controlled release of information policy. Never mind covering up the data for the controlled labor release experiments that detected life now, mind you. Curiosity has also discovered organic molecules in 3 billion-year-old sedimentary rocks near the surface. Organics are the carbon-containing building blocks of life as we know it. But again, they're not convincing evidence of life by themselves. Naturally occurring organics have also been spotted on asteroids, for example. Really? Again, prove it here on Earth. Never mind an asteroid that you haven't shown us much evidence of. And really, show me that evidence. We're only going by everything that you tell us anyway. So let's look at the fact. 1976, there was no way that a chemical process did it, because the life that farted out those irradiated gases of the experiment had died. You cannot kill a chemical full signature of life in the same conditions, because it should be able to be duplicated in any conditions of which life only abounds in. If you go beyond that, all right, you should have kept seeing the results. And that's the basic gist of Dr. Gillivan's, not me throwing words in his mouth. Because he already has stated about this, Mr. Leonard David. Again, only listeners to this show could appreciate. And they sure could appreciate the connection of your article from yesterday, just after the fact of the petition's end, which you already knew at the petition beginning, again, of what this was taking place, but you did not want to cover it. Do I need to mention names? I'll let the names mention it themselves. Let's put it that way.
We prompted him to cover the story about the petition, but he opted not to, for whatever reason. We urge the listeners out there to make their comments under Leonard David's article. So we really are curious why Sherlock was not mentioned in the article, since the article was talking about the issue of detecting on Mars.
Organics, right.
But the article did fully give Gillivan's side of the issue. And really, we want answers out of NASA, why they're going backwards. The article opens up an opportunity to put into the comments, to put your link to the petition, which we should try again with better networking. We can get 100,000 signatures on that petition. And in fact, Leonard David has given us a forum now for which we can reach a lot of people. So, like, we ask Leonard David to look further into the issue with the consideration of Sherlock, which is the most important next direction in this conversation.
Right.
That is Sherlock, and Sherlock is like a forensics scene where they simply take an ultraviolet-like light and detect for luminescence. As far as I understand, that's not really going to detect life.
Correct.
It makes bloodstains glow, but is not necessarily going to be conclusive on life. And Dr. Levin's experiment is far more capable with its controlled aspect to it to detect life.
And determine what it is.
It rules out the fact that the positive reading was not a false positive, showing that the organics were from volcanic material rather than from ongoing life processes. So NASA is going backwards. To me, I'm reminded of Fahrenheit 451 when Montag watches his wife pull out an old-fashioned razor, saying this is the latest and greatest thing, meaning that we're going backwards rather than forwards, and it's as if NASA does not want to detect life so quickly. They say they want to detect life, but they want to control the timeline to up to
their agenda. Exactly.
30, 40 years.
Yep.
And NASA belongs to us. And we have the capability of having these experiments now that are far more conclusive than the experiment they're going to use on the next two Mars mission, or two rovers, which is Sherlock. So Sherlock doesn't detect biological processes, and so it's no it's Sherlock.
Yep. So back to the article again. Then there's the July 2018 news from the ESA, European Space Agency's Mars Express mission. The orbiter apparently spotted an underground lake beneath a mile of ice near the red planet South Pole. Again, bullshit. It was detected a few years ago, but it was sat on because at first for a couple of years they had to come up with something because they didn't know what it was. It was an anomaly. That's why I refer to William K. Hartman's book, Mars Underground. Those who have read the book, and even William K. Hartman himself, in the least may appreciate the irony in my words there. Whether he addresses or adheres to it or not, it doesn't matter. It's an anomaly. Now, it's only been shown to be consistent of how we found water here on Earth, especially under thick layers of ice and anomalies detected at the South Pole. You see? Now, I'd like to know if there's any magnetic anomalies attributed to this so-called lake on Mars that's underground that's been detected that they're now claiming is water. But either way, whether an anomaly of something of intelligence buried there, designed, or a lake, or whatever you want to call it, that's a meter deep, a meter thick, but 12 miles wide. So, it's just possible. Okay, well, it is possible. But remember that at the same token, that would also add credibility to Dr. Gil Levin's experiments that NASA refused to publicly acknowledge years ago. Again, scamming us for all these years of millions and billions, when they already had the answer, and they could have sent it time and time again to get replication of those results, even along with the modern equipment we have there on board Curiosity now. With Dr. Gill's control labeled release experiments, it would have been game over for NASA's control policy. And that's not what they want. They don't want verification, validation. They have their own agenda. Again, of the corporations that control them, that control the media, that control what we get to see or to know. When all our balls are against the wall, prove me wrong, Leonard David. Again, no offense, but we see what side of the fence you're on. And I see it clearly, and that's what's important here, regardless if anyone else does or not. But back to the article. Various spacecraft have found evidence of water on Mars over the years, Levin said. And now we are deluged. In essence, a flood. We are flooded with an underground lake. So water is no longer the problem here to consider in evidences of his life detection experiments. So Dr. Levin also pointed to Curiosity imagery that could be interpreted as depicting fossilized stromatolites, structures that are built by colonial microbes here on Earth. There are intriguing similarities between ancient sedimentary rocks on Mars and structures shaped by microbes on Earth, he said. Everything that we have learned about environmental conditions on Mars, Dr. Levin said that it would permit terrestrial microorganisms to survive. And that includes the harsh radiation, the low pressure, and the frigid temperatures. Never mind, and I will add the ones that would also remain dormant. And he stated that again, Mr. Leonard David, on the Martian Revelation show in May. As for present-day life on the red planet, it's getting to the point to where the shoe is on the other foot, Levin said. It's very hard to image a sterile Mars. Viking mission veteran Ben Clark, now a senior research scientist at the Space Science Institute in Boulder, Colorado, stated that it's about time to start earnestly searching for signs of Mars life again. Ben Clark developed a Viking-carried instrument that measured the composition of Martian soils. From what we have learned since Viking about the past history of Mars, it was even more eminently suited for the origin of life than we knew when the search began, Clark said. A Viking lesson learned is that you had better understand the environment well before designing tests for biological activity. Boom! You hear that, people? Of what he just said. He admitted they threw the cart in front of the horse. They detected life first instead of doing it the Turtleneck Pace Speedway of doing what they're doing now, looking for signs of possible life before Dr. Gil Levin is able to be validated and vindicated. Again, I say it's bullshit. But you can hear him in his words between the lines there. He's admitting they threw the cart in front of the horse there. And obviously now it's time to look at the Mars life question again. Because they were not ready to release it to the public then, but they are now. After raping us and milking us of millions and billions over the years. Again, like Dr. Gil Levin said, this is what part of what will make NASA to be made to be feel embarrassed. Sorry, they deserve it. I don't know what to tell you there. Again, it wasn't Dr. Gil Levin's fault. You guys came to him. And you could have well performed the experiment since and conducted the experiment even with this upgraded version of it. And you guys including a microscope so we all could see it. So we could judge on that from real science rather than the politically controlled agenda spin on it that you did. And messing up a man's life over it. It's wrong, and messing with all of our lives ever since, especially in colleges. What do we pay for? Lies and deception. So now they understand the red planet more. So now the cart can be put in place behind the horse again. But remember, the cart is now watching the horse's ass. And who's doing that? Dr. Gil Levin's the cart? Only he, I think, could really appreciate the irony. But life is intrinsically linked to its environment, Schultz Makuk told Space.com. Not having that information in hand, we cannot home in on optimal search and light detection strategies. Bullshit! And that, of course, also applies to the icy moons, he added, referring to ocean-harboring worlds such as the Jupiter moon Europa and the Saturn satellite Enceladus. Well, you know what? There he's just pitching for the funds to go there, too, being who he works for. Which obviously they are good reasons. But the Mars issue has to be tackled first. Stop trying to get us to give you more millions and billions without answering the question that was already answered in 1976. That's my input on it. Like it or not, I don't give a shit. This is my show here. I dictate the content. Now, if it would have been known at the time of the Viking mission about Mars what is known today, they probably would have come up with the conclusion that microbial life likely exists on Mars, Schultz Makuk said. You see, in that sense, it's validating Dr. Gil. But is it vindicating him? Remember, he was in the front. He was the cart, obviously. Now he's looking at the horses' asses trying to justify their actions to us all over the years, let alone to him. But I think the consensus is shifting more into the direction that the extraordinary claim would be that Mars is and was always lifeless, he added, referring to astronomer Carl Sagan's famous saying that extraordinary claims need extraordinary evidence. And he was saying that from a politically controlled spun agenda by NASA and those corporations to begin with anyway. So don't go using him as a big ploy like he's some holy speaker for us all and for all science and knowledge when it's not. Again, no offense. But nonetheless, Schultz and Makuk said that any declaration of life on Mars still requires overwhelming evidence before being scientifically saluted. Just think about how long it took before it was accepted that there was and still is liquid water on Mars, he said. That ain't our fault, that's yours. Your complicitness to the controlled release policy of NASA and again the corporations dictating what we can know or not. Don't go try to make us feel guilty. That was your fault. Drip, drip, dripping and turtleneck, pace neck speeding for all these 40 years since 1976. Again, you ain't bullshit me. John Rummel is familiar with Levin's steadfast life on Mars position. The Mars science community would have benefited greatly if Gil Levin had aspired to a leadership position in science after the Viking lander missions had completed their light detection experiments, said Rummel. I agree. But now they're only trying to what? They're trying to kiss his ass knowing that what they did to Dr. Gil Levin was wrong. You see the problem here, and the problem I have with this fact. Because Mr. Leonard David wants to ignore the petition. He wants to ignore any knowledge of it being a reality to you all. They've been skimming the numbers back on it as well. Therefore, they've been controlling that petition as well as Mr. Leonard David, waiting for the petition to end. Therefore, disinclude any mention of the Mad Martian and the Martian Revelation, who had Dr. Gil Levin on first and still has it in the archive, detailing all that happened. Again, that's what you people pay for. My balls are to the wall, and so has been Dr. Gil Levin's, and now they're trying to give him the reach around. Oh, by saying the Mars science community would have benefited greatly if Gil Levin had aspired to a leadership position. Yeah, they should have instead blackballing him, give him a leadership position to shut up, right? To make it easier for them? Dr. Gil Levin's the first Mars revealer, and he's the first unsung hero of the Martian Revelation. Stop trying to give him the reach around, unless you have the balls to come on this show and debate me about it. You know, the one you just want to ignore. Like you're going to be able to control all that, by the way. You're only going to be exposed and all be made to feel embarrassed. Dr. Gil's words there. Now, this Rummel guy, he twice served of NASA's Planetary Protection Officer and is a former chair on planetary protection for the agency's Committee on Space Research. All right, so now you're protecting the planet. From what? From the knowledge that we all had the knowledge of the answer to life on Mars answered in 1976? For protecting us all, and from the knowledge and the fact that now you're trying to give Dr. Gil Levin at age 94 to reach around like he really could use or appreciate from you now? That they should have aspired to give him a leadership position instead of blackballing him, right, after those missions ended. Yeah, how you going to save face, pun intended, on that one? Not as long as I'm here on the airwaves. You will be made to feel embarrassed. I promise you. But anyway, what is he protecting us all from? Think about it. If Rummel is NASA's Planetary Protection Officer, what is he protecting us from? Or what is he protecting NASA from? From us, from we the people. See? That's how the reach around fits in. I'm not a stupid man. And neither are the listeners to this show. Like CNN and those others who control them. That control our NASA space policy. Well, that did. Now that changes with my President Doug Trump and Vice President Mike Pence with the creation of the Space Force. When NASA still wants to be a leader, wrong. It'll be in the hands of we the people in the military. NASA, you can help build the infrastructure, but you're not going to be the leader of we the people. Not after all this is exposed. I guarantee it. So new missions with better informed instruments looking for life that were possible then, Rummel said. I think you misquoted your statement there, unless you're giving us all a gist on the inside of what's really up. But they needed a strong advocate who had the sort of data that Levin possessed. Yes, Dr. Gil Levin, again, would have been great to be reached around it by then. But now he's 94 years old. I don't think he could have appreciated or even want to consider a reach around now. Now it's validation, vindication, and legacy. You want to really do good by him? Put these experiments. Stop blackballing the petition. We shouldn't even need a petition to have the Dr. Gil Levin's updated control labor release experiments on board that Mars rover 2020. If not, don't sell me your bullshit. You're only scamming us, and you're lying to him. And you're scamming him along, trying to give him the reach around. And only he would appreciate that statement. So fundamentally, there is nothing new about Mars that wasn't possible with Viking. But it is a long way from Crisis or Utopia Planitia, the two Viking lander spots on Mars in 1976, to the subpolar cap lake now claimed by the Italians. Rummel, who's now based at the SETI Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence Institute, told Space.com. Remember, we had Tess Shostak. That, in a way, helped spur this petition for Dr. Gil Levin when he wanted to come on, and no offense, but he was degrading us all, stating it, being pissed that science isn't done by petitions. It isn't done by the president ordering NASA to put such and such experiment on board a rover. Again, bullshit. So look at who this guy that Leonard David brings in. Tell me what I'm saying here is not a conspiracy theory, but a conspiracy fact. Leonard David waited with knowledge of who I was, what the Martian Revelation show is, the fact that Dr. Gillivan was on it, the things he stated, the fact we had a petition, he wanted to ignore it, and wait till it was over until he'll come out with this article where he brings this control policy spin on it, trying to give Dr. Gillivan the reach around because they think the Martian Revelation will not be loud enough, or that you people are stupid enough to just let them get away with this. Hey, just saying. But I seen the evidences. I seen the higher numbers on the petition. Granted, we didn't get nowhere near the 100,000, but there was a lot more than what's being currently shown when it ended. Let's put it that way, because I would see the numbers double, triple back. How? Why? Well, we have our answer, it seems. We have the search for extraterrestrial intelligence Rummel on the case. That he told Space.com if Levin had stayed fully engaged, we might have already tried to go there. Bullshit! You guys blackballed him. You guys mocked him and made him into the Jesse Marcel of the Viking mission. It's time to start calling real what's real and bullshit what's bullshit. But beyond the science debate, the article continues, astrobiologist Chris McKay of NASA's Ames Research Center in Silicon Valley is a longtime Mars investigator. Let's see what he has to say, right? The science community is in general agreement, McKay said, that the Viking labeled release experiment did not detect life. Yep, here we go. Those who wanted to follow the policy-driven control, they wanted trying to save their asses. All right, whatever. Prove it. They never wanted to. All they had to do is send another experiment on board and more updated and now included with microscopes and everything else to prove it. But the reactions noted by that instrument and the other results from the Viking can be explained by reactive chemicals called percolates, he said. You see? So this gets my blood percolating, I'm telling you what. So that term fits. And Dr. Gillivan is 94 years old. So think about how much his blood has been percolating over the years, probably keeping himself alive this long to get the just legacy he deserves and respect from all of us, and including you. Hey, look, we just heard that other guy just claim he should have been offered a position, right? Give him the reach around. Well, it's a little late to give him the reach around in anything like that category. So there's no sense in fuzzying up on anything. You know what I'm saying? He wants validation and vindication and his legacy back. So percolates were first detected in Martian soil by NASA's Phoenix lander in 2008. Well, if he just got done saying Chryse Polynesia and Utopia Polynesia are, totally different vast regions of, now he's going to go to the North Pole with the Phoenix lander and state that is evidence of showing a means to debunk those other two locations. How can that be possible? Isn't that contradictory? I mean, just saying. But further observations by other spacecraft strongly suggest that percolates are widespread throughout Mars. Oh, they strongly suggest, which means that's their guesstimations, and there's no evidence that they can show that fact as of moment. But that's what I get out of that. But the percolate explanation, however, is tentative, McKay said. I bet it is. We cannot rule out that Gillivan is correct, and that there are dormant life forms in the Martian soil, he said. Exactly. So let's continue this drip, 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 turtleneck pace speed debate along with missions being sent and these experiments, crucial experiments, not be sent on board. Right, Mr. Leonard David of Space.com? If so, that finding has implications beyond the science debated. Are we confident enough that the Martian soil is lifeless to send astronauts and then to bring those astronauts back to Earth? I say no, McKay said. It seems to me that the standard of proof must be higher for these activities, and we have not reached that standard yet. According to whom? Of the NASA Control Release Information Policy, or by the scientists of the Controlled Label Release experiments that actually detected the life that you guys are refusing to send back to Mars? to show that you are right. When, in fact, you're wrong, and you've been wrong, and you are wrong what you did to the lives of those who had an impact and that deserves a legacy and respect upon the American people from a bicentennial year, no less. But I know many of you Americans are thinking you're in control and going to steer we the people, and not for us to be patriotic or happy about our nation, on the nation's origins, and our nation's future, without the commies running around and the Islamists trying to control we the people and destroy us. Especially the global corporation leaders for a one world order that are using them to do that to us. I mean, again, you can't make this crap up. But McKay thinks Dr. Levin is right in continuing to insist that the possibility of life be considered. Yes, then put it to the test, McKay. You don't speak for me or we the people and what we want. In our national space program. Life may not be the scientifically preferred explanation, but it cannot yet be disproven, McKay concluded. Exactly, you just said it. You don't want to find life. It's not the most scientifically preferred explanation. Why? You want to stick your heads in the sand, literally. Even with the next mission that's on its way there now. The Mars Insight, that we know listeners to this show could appreciate, is looking for the subsurface illegals. So again, there's also admitting that they cannot disprove Dr. Gil Levin's conclusions. So then why the debate? Why the blackballing? Why the turtleneck pace speed? Why the avoidance of the Martian revelation and the truth of Dr. Gil Levin and all he had to say on the Martian revelation, even before he was on Dr. David Livingston's show? You see, you're picking sides and just like CNN on who you want people to think are the ones who bring you the truth, instead of touting the line of NASA politically controlled information to be accepted by them. Dr. David Livingston, that's one thing there I do not respect for you doing. And you've been on my show in the past. You know who I am. And you didn't want to come on the show today. Why? Because you wanted over the years to show how much that you want the attention from those mainstream scientists to make your show into something to which Mr. Leonard David here can make a political spin on it and avoid the truth. So no offense, Dr. David Livingston, but that too is bullshit. Now on that note, you listeners to this show, you know what time it is. Pack 'em and smoke 'em, because you're going to need 'em, as we come back and introduce our guest, Greg Orme, on the Martian Revelation.
I'll be back.
Don't run. We are your friends.
Hello. My name is Seraphine Hurley, and I'm your new host here on Late Night in the Midlands on Saturdays from 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock, Tripping the Void. Are you going to come on a trip with me? We're going to talk about all kinds of subjects, from cryptozoology to taboos, cultural and otherwise, as well as anything abnormal. So I encourage you to come on and take a trip with me. Are you ready? I know that I am.
The L&M Radio Network offers an exciting chat room for you, the listener. Come interact with your fellow listeners and like-minded people and talk about the shows, from the paranormal to conspiracies and anything else L&M related. All you have to do is go to the lnmradionetwork.com website and click the L&M official chat page button at the top of the homepage. Then click connect and you'll be able to log in to the chat room. We're here for you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and the chat room is for both Studio A and Studio B. We look forward to seeing you there.
Welcome back, everybody. This is Gary Legier, the Mars Revealer, known also as your Mad Martian. And you're listening to the Martian Revelation. That's upon you all again now. And please, everybody, go to www.thefacesofmars.com. That's www.thefacesofmars.com. And scroll down, read about tonight's guest information, and also see the images, as well as click on the news link under the guest images for the Viking Lander 40 years later link for the Space.com article we went over. So let's introduce our guest, Greg Orme. And Greg Orme has been researching possible Martian artifacts since the early 90s. And he found the crown face in July of 2000, which was publicized by the late Dr. Tom Van Flandern in a press conference. It then appeared in the New York Post, on Good Morning America, and even on a Fox News special. And he also found a well-known Martian spiders image, M0804688. This was seen by Arthur C. Clarke, who discussed it many times with the media. He now claims to have proven artificiality by uncovering 945 geometric shapes on Mars' surface that is used in engineering. Greg also has found 2 large hyperbolas on Mars, also following a precise mathematical formula. Parabolas are used for load bearing and engineering, like a parabolic arch in old Roman buildings. And also a curve under a bridge is usually a parabola. So making any curve like this shape is very strong and less likely to crack somewhere. And they, meaning the Martians, seem to have used parabolas everywhere to make hills, dams, etc. stronger. And Greg states that these things are interesting, but it's hard to prove that they are real. The geometric evidence is mainly about proving something is artificial as a start. Then all these other things appear more plausible. But geometry can be artificial, but to prove it cannot possibly be natural is not easy. The parabolas and hyperbolas are impossible. And Greg has had some agreement on this with some skeptical scientists as well. And Greg's been around for a long time, ever since, from what I remember, when I was first taken under the wing of the Dark Mission of Hoagland, when he brought me as an honorary member over to Enterprise Mission back in '98. And I knew of Greg way back then, too. And he was never on my show, but I'll say this much. Over the years, he has definitely increased in his work and putting forth the findings. And you know what? I respect that, and I commend them for doing it, because many people still are not doing it, you know? So, but and again, that's my opinion. And I've been around this work for many years. But it's great to have him on with us as a first-time virgin to the show. And Greg, I believe you're on with us.
Yeah. Hi, Gary.
Hey, doing great. Thanks a lot for being on, my friend. You know, it's really interesting, and the timing of it all, of this discussion, what comes up, because, you know, we're dealing with life in a big debate back and forth all these years, Greg, and the public mainstream. Well, I don't know if you caught the opening there, but boy, I had to vent. And the work that we do and the work that you do and been accumulating over the years just goes so beyond the question of microbes. I mean, you know, give it a rest. We know it was there, and it's definitely there now in that sense. But from my point of view, and definitely for yours, again, which I appreciate, and listeners on the facesofmars.com, scroll down to his links, ultor.org, ultor.org, as well as martians.life. All right, and then you can click on those 2 things. We're going to be clicking back and forth to those things throughout this night. But again, the thing that Greg is focusing on, he's looking around and finding not the evidence, how with microbial life. We got a bigger problem here. Ain't that right, Greg?
Yes. But we don't really know how long ago all these died out. So there may be very limited microbial life still there, and you might even have to look in the right places. So too, you know.
Oh, indeed.
The theory that I worked out is that a lot of these things are actually built a long time ago, even up to about 3 billion years ago. So they could have even been built before there was even life on Earth, or maybe even just algae in the oceans, you know. So we could have actually got life from Mars even way back then, and gradually life came from Mars on meteors.
Well, I got to tell you. Well, right, Greg, and I got to tell you, even with the SETI guys and the mainstream scientists, and as well as, us type of researchers, people would call us anomalists or, Mars anomaly hunters, which is what it really started out as. Ain't that right? Raw! But I'll just say this. Of what it is showing and what it's revealing, it is just incredible because, again, hell with the microbes. We are seeing the evidences of life, intelligent handiwork, and not on a primitive scale.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
I mean, so my that ups the ante for all this.
Yes. My basic theory, I published a book on this about 12 years ago or so after I found the crown face. And I worked out a theory in that book that Mars might have originally have been terraformed, that someone visited Mars a long time ago, and that they terraformed Mars and brought it to life with meteors. It's quite an interesting read. It's available on my website.
That's where I was going. I'm sorry for the brain fart, everyone. Right. I'm sorry about the brain fart. That's where I was going. That's where many of us researchers from all sides claim that, yes, they are looking positively. Well, life came from Mars. I mean, even with the evidences we found of a meteoritic, fossils here on Earth from Martian rock that they believe was from Mars. And, that's a good step of evidence in the right direction. But avoiding to send the right tests and ask the right questions and all that, that's not science. And how they treat this research and what you show is even harder to try to even discuss with these people, and they won't even do it, let alone talk about the questions of life on Mars being detected in 1976. Why?
Well, it also
because
has to be
of the implications
well.
of what we see.
The problem is too, a lot of things just appear in just as random shapes. People see faces in clouds, and they see faces on pieces of toast, and all things like that.
But
you do not. Really
from an experienced researcher, though, Greg, from an experienced researcher point of view, you do not adhere that is the case that's going on here, because that's what the debunkers and the policy controllers love to say regarding the things we find on Mars, and everyone else just believes them because no one wants to speak up for fear of ridicule. That's beyond giggle factor. It's policy commie control.
Well, that's true, but these things do also occur random.
Permanent features that no one's there that even exists now could even carve it, right? So that's the scarier, bigger picture. And you're seeing it by. That's why before we get into that, I want to know more about you, and so does the audience. What got you started and able to see what got you interested to do your work you do before we get into your work? Does that make sense? Is that okay, sir?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Well, I really just got interested in it because I was seeing these pictures of another planet, for free by NASA, and I just got fascinated into looking at the geology and in those days we started to see ancient riverbeds, and then they started to talk about how there may have been an ocean there at one point, and gradually I started to see things that might have been artificial, and I started to wonder more about it, and probably the big thing for me was finding the crown face in 2000. That was
that also became known as the king face.
Yes. Well,
so the crown face, I believe, was the first title, correct?
Yes. Well, originally I called it the crown face.
Right.
Well, actually, no. Originally, I called it the king face, but then Tom Van Flandern suggested the crown face because we couldn't really tell.
Oh, that was the shift. Okay. Well, I remember way back then when you revealed that, and quite a stir. And I'm going to admit, because of the data, then I was iffy about it. I was really iffy about it. But by the time years came later, and George Haas definitely continued, the Sidonia Institute, continuing to follow up with this face and shown, and you have shown over the years, and when I came back on the net after a hiatus, we won't get into that, people know what's up, that I started to see more images of this. And, and looking at the one I have on my page now of that crown face, of the king face, you could see the artistical detailing all over it. And it's not wispy, it's not light like how they released it in 2000, remember? Or 2001. You didn't see the detail like you do on this image here. There's been more evolution and ability to process images too now, mind you, people. You have to do that because NASA gives them out in such a way, well, they hope you don't see them. But if you process the raw data yourself, lo and behold, there it is. They can't deny it. They just never talk about it.
Yes, well, it was re-imaged by the high-rise orbiter. The new image is about 300 meg in size, and I think the original Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter image was only about 5 meg in size. So it could also be re-imaged again up to about, I think the maximum size is 1.5 gig that they can do with a high-rise image. So we could actually potentially get about 5 times the detail if they re-imaged it,
Right. It didn't give you a high-rise actual image, or did it? Or was it the CTX image? CTX.
No, this is a high-rise image. That's why we can get into such detail on it.
Was the whole face? So, I think I might. I don't remember, but the whole face was not seen in that strip, though, right?
Originally not. No. In the original image from the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, it didn't get the part of the left side of the face, but then it was re-imaged. I made a request to high-rise to re-image it. Unfortunately, they did. And the photo you've got on your webpage is actually a high-rise image.
Right. Well, obviously, because I did not remember seeing that type of detail from the MGS mock imagery camera, Mars orbital camera imagery. It was wispier too, the way Malin would give it out and whatever. All I know is that this image, thank you for clarifying, that's from MRO, because that would explain it, because you could see the nook of the brow of where the nose ridge meets the forehead, the way the eyes are, and it's sculpted, and it's sculpted beyond that face. So this thing is well planted. And what always brought me out, even the question of why it might be possible, even though when I was a skeptic, Greg, of it, is the chin and the mouth. Look at those sharp features there. Even in MGS, it was there. This MRO more than clarifies it. But look at the ridge line coming off from the nose, nostril, and it goes down like where to meet the corner of the lip, as it was. It follows it exactly anatomically correct. Isn't that interesting? I just find it, this is not dunes that we're looking at. You might be thinking you're seeing dunes away from it, but again, a lot of things are illusionistical on Mars. Many people just fly over things, pun intended, without really considering what's really there. And that's the harder, the bigger problem, which I believe gets more into you describing how you got into your work because of what you've been able to find based on your knowledge that taught you. So you're able to see the things you see.
Well, the interesting thing about the king face is that so many people do really see a face there. And when Tom Van Flandern originally did a press conference on it, it sort of took off around the world. It was on Good Morning America. It was in the New York. It was on a few other TV shows, and I think it was on in the Times in England. And it indicated that a lot of people do see it, because sometimes you talk to skeptics and they say, "Oh, I can't see anything," But people do seem to see it. And then Fox News decided to include it in a documentary they were doing on UFOs, and they put that in, and quite a lot of people saw that as well. So it's important to get a validation that if a lot of people do see it, then it overcomes that objection that it's only just a few people who are imagining things.
Oh, it's no
that
imagination.
Doesn't prove it's other.
And this is coming, I've found several other faces of Mars as well. I'm on the hunt, as well as you may have heard, and connecting back to someone that has that data that provided it. This person thinks he's the investigator still, when no, he's the investigated, and he's been acting like it, even like that ever since. What am I saying that's wrong here? Nothing. All right, prove it, people. Prove it, you, especially who I talk about. You're still a welcome guest. You've been summoned. Anyway, but this raises the question, not just based on secret data that was provided and, put as deep background for an in-your-face Brookings type acclamation program where down through time this is supposed to come out to get us used to the idea of what the faces of Mars, beyond mere tricks of light and shadow, in essence. Title of my book, had to plug that. So, and yes, I've written 2 pages, Dr. J. I'm working on it. Not Dr. J, who was that? Dr. White Sky Cloud, Mr. White Sky Cloud. Interesting things. But anyway, interesting. But this raises the ante, not just is the face of Cydonia mere trick of light and shadow. There's many different types of faces that are applied to Mars and its artistical and constructural concepts, to where even they do share similar characteristics like the face of Cydonia, but it don't have to look the same. Yeah. It has that bifurcatedness, for instance.
Did you have a look at that queen face, for example, that new queen face I found? People can see that if they go to altor.org. The first picture I've got there is it shows the queen face on the left and the king face on the right, and they're both very similar in their face. You can imagine it being the same creature. And one problem with
what was the scale of that king face? If I could interrupt for a minute, I didn't do the measurement yet on it, but what was the scale of that face from top of the crown to the chin? Did you do? Did you test it?
I think it's about 300 meters. The interesting thing about it. Oh
God, here we go. What is that in English?
That's about 300 yards. But I worked out an interesting thing. If you're standing on the other side of the valley and looking over at the face,
you would see it.
I worked out how it would look, and if you can imagine like standing about 10 feet away from a wall, and if you can imagine a face on the wall that's about 2 foot high, that's about how big it would look if you were on the opposite side of the valley looking over at it.
Right, so but they were more concerned with looking from above, because when you're looking from above, it's booming.
Well, it's possible, but it would also be easily visible from the other side of the valley. I worked that out,
Well, that's obvious, But yes, and it's incredible. Yeah. Okay, so now, again, your work that mainly got you interested, because obviously you had an education, you were educated, and please tell us about that and what you used in your educated tools to help you see and help show us the things you're finding on Mars.
Well, I've always been
to validate the artificiality you want to prove is artificial.
Yeah, I'm mainly into computers and networking, that sort of thing, and I'm also a bit of a mathematician and studying physics, that sort of thing. So I guess I look at it from that point of view. But I also try to look at the scientific way of proving things, and so I look for geometric evidence as well, because if there was a civilization on Mars, you can't build a civilization without geometry, like you only have to look around at the buildings around you. There's right angles everywhere, and
well, Carl Sagan said that himself, didn't he? He said, "What do you look for look for an alien civilization?" Well, easy, keep it simple. Stupid was to what? Look for the geometry. So in a sense, he was trying to clue us all into what he knew was really there, in my opinion.
Well, see, a very important part of geometry is, and in architecture, is the parabola. Like I was telling you. If you look
at the same parabola, it shows I'm not that educated.
It's the same thing. Some people say it differently. But if you look
I learned here too. This is what this is about, and we appreciate you being on because this is important. But go ahead.
Well, I was looking for some sort of geometric key, because if engineering was used to build these things, then there should be so many examples of engineering designs that it would prove artificiality. And one of the most basic things that are used in engineering is a parabola. So if you look at like ancient Roman buildings, for example, like the Colosseum, you'll see arches, and those arches are usually parabolas. And the reason they use parabolas is they're less likely.
Even in churches, right? They use those cathedral things.
at one point and then it'll break. And so they used to originally use like a semicircle, and eventually they worked out that a parabola is the strongest shape, and that's why they mainly use them. So that was one of the things that I looked for was using straight lines and right angles, but also parabolas, because if they were building things that were fairly large, then sooner or later that they would stumble upon the idea of parabolas, you know. And there's a lot of dam-like structures on Mars. If you go to my webpage at altor.org and you scroll down, there's a link to a paper I published on that about the Martian dams. And there's probably about 1,000 of them if you go into the various craters around Mars, you know. And NASA believes that they're natural formations, that some of them are like mud slumps, that mud would slump down the side of a crater and happen to form like a dam shape. But what I found was about 80% of these are actually parabolas. And if mud was just slumping down the side of a crater...
Parabolic geometry technology.
Yes. So if someone was building a dam in a crater, it would be natural to use a parabola because of this even shape again, so the dam wouldn't crack, you know. And so there's all kinds of different dams in these craters. Like some of them are built on the side of the crater wall, like halfway up the crater, and you'll see a parabola there. And quite often in between them, there'll be like a peak in between them, and that's also a parabola. That's a parabolic arch. And if you go down to the bottom of the crater, on the edge of the crater floor, sometimes there's dam-like shapes that appear to be dug into the crater floor, and they're also parabolas. About 80% of them are also parabolas. And then you get these pits that are quite often in the bottom of craters with rounded shapes, and the edges of them are also parabolas. And so I started using it as sort of a guideline to look at all different formations to see what chances that it was that they were artificial. And I found a total of about...
And what chances there would be a lot more than one or two or three, then it becomes more than a coincidence after some point with what you see based on your math.
Oh, yeah. Well, there's things that look like roads on Mars that I detail in my books as well. And you can see the excerpts at Martians.life. And quite often, for some reason, those roads are curved and they form a perfect parabola. And then there's these things that look like tubes that look like a covered road, and very often they're parabolas as well. And then there's parts of the hills that seem to have collapsed, and like they were giant buildings. And very often inside you can see parabolas in them. So basically I've just catalogued all the parabolas I could find and say, here's 945 of them. See if you can explain all of these, you know, as just being random by random chance, you know. And what I'm saying in the books and on the websites is there's just too many. Because if you were doing engineering, you would just naturally use parabolas. And it beggars the imagination to think that nature would just happen to form these things all over Mars that just happen to be perfect parabolas.
And it wouldn't be standing alone just with the parabolas. There'd be other geometry and features intertwining and interacting with these, right? That's what I'm seeing as the Arscapes. They use this parabolic geometry as it was as a basis to carve the planet. It's got to be.
Well, that's a natural thing that engineers would do, you know. And so I decided that was the best evidence to prove artificiality. Because as I said, once you can prove that something is artificial on Mars, then it becomes a lot more plausible. You can't really prove a face on Mars is artificial, because someone's always going to say, well, it's just random chance. But if there's all these parabolas...
Well, that's because they're stupid.
Yeah. Well, then it makes it look like the idea of faces on Mars.
Cydonia. There's no way that face is Cydonia, for instance, especially with the modern MRO imagery of the CTX imagery and all the various amounts of image data we have of the face now. There's no way in hell. That has too much. The look of intelligence in itself speaks for itself of what we're seeing.
But then
they're
it goes
speaking to us.
Forward.
They're seeing the eye follow it across the sky. Let's put it that way. They see the intelligence. We're just not getting the animation movie to show that eye following us.
Well, it's one thing to say that, but it's another thing to prove it, because NASA might seem skeptical, but also they do a lot of things on the basis of engineering.
Well, of course, it's classified. The listeners to this show appreciate that and understand that. But we're going to break all that. We have to. It has to. Well, even Trump and Pence said it. To fit up with their vision for the Space Force, all of this has to start coming out. Wouldn't you agree?
Well, I'm not even sure that they knew themselves before this. It's easier to think, well, maybe there's a conspiracy going on and all of that. But I don't really know, and I try not to get into.
I wouldn't call that conspiracy. I would call that intelligence. That's why the probes they send there, like the name Reconnaissance Orbiter, and when it came out, and its official proclamation, get this, was the study of a foreign planet. They know the words they use in, and being NASA, and then they're saying the study of foreign planet. Why? You cannot have a foreign without a nation or nationalists.
Yes.
Well, so right there, they give it away. They give it away, but the control spin and the way they educate us, it keeps it controlled. But they're slowly but surely opening the door more. But now I say the dam is broken, and it's not just a river anymore. It's flooding down the river, and it's breaking the banks. And people who aren't gonna be able to understand this or grasp it real quick. Grasp as branches to save them, to pull them out of it, to watch everything that unfolds. They're just going to get drowned in it. And especially by looking at your work and what you're laying out here, boy, that would blow their worlds away right now looking at it. Because how can you explain it naturally? And the point is, sir, even you can't. I mean, that's the point here. And this hyperbolic geometry technology, this is you hit the nail right on the head, sir. And I commend you for keeping on looking and looking closely.
Well, if people look at the second image on that page, if you look at the second image on the faces of Mars, that was an image that you thought was interesting yourself. You remember that one? PRHH.
Oh, it's more than interesting. It's artificial. All of it. Even the picture under it, which shows your line details. Look on the left of the one under that, and where you had that, you can see right where the parabolic edge on the left there, you can see the straight line which cuts over the corner of it and goes straight through where it would come out to the other end of the parabolic corner. That and then what looks like little grids, like little city blocks, you could interpret.
Yeah, that's a pretty amazing image, isn't it?
That is not natural. You're following the lines. That's what I mean. It's all there. So if we see this, they see it.
Well, it's like the water might have come in through that small opening on the left and gradually come through and irrigated this whole area.
I make a straight line that's going underneath the ground, which you can see is risen above it, and which we could see illusionistically would connect to the end of that hyperbolic arc. I mean, again, you can't make this up. People, look at his line tracings. Compare it. You prove him wrong.
Well, there's also an argument from convenience too. Like if you look at that picture, and even if you think it's natural, it's all very convenient that we could go to Mars one day and we could settle in this, and there's all happens to be these wall fields that are just there, and all these walls are the same height and about the same width, and you could, if we got the atmosphere thicker and then there was rain, and then rain would fall into these things and we could maybe grow things in them. That's all speculative whether that could happen. But the thing is, or they're just all sculpting down a giant planetary sculpture to which this is just one small piece of what's supposed to be seen from a much bigger picture globally. But I call that the Llewellyn factor. Well, the thing is, it's just like a farm that's just sitting there.
Oh, I understand.
I mean, you don't even have to think it. Yeah, and it's just the walls are there, and you could just, and these darker areas that like the small hills, there's a lot of evidence that these are actually hollow, and they might be habitats. And even if people are arguing, well, that's natural as well, that you could go into these things, because I show other pictures in my book where these things are actually collapsing. Sorry?
Yeah, but the thing is, they ignore the relief.
Yeah.
They ignore the relief
also,
on these, and you had the lines going over the relief yourself, and you could see where the relief is flowing. So collapsed or not, the art continues on matching. That should be impossible if it was all collapsed.
And also, the other thing interesting about these walls and like wall fields is I show this. We'll get to it later, but there's an image on Martians.life that I show. And these walls are actually hollow, and it's also, again, it's a very convenient thing if it happens to be natural that all these things happen to be hollow, and you could walk through them like tunnels, So I actually show pictures. There's many
like
areas
we do here on Earth in the dams. You could go tourists and walk through them. A lot of them, right? Yeah. Same thing, same concept.
Yeah. So to say it's a natural formation where there just happens to be all these walls and fields where you could grow things if they thicken out. But just happens to be tunnels through these walls. I mean, it starts to get very unlikely, even if it's difficult to prove that it's artificial. I mean, these things are all very convenient, And if you look at the picture above that, the one I was talking about, it's like a big dam, ponds of water. And again, this is very convenient. If we managed to terraform Mars again and water started coming down with rain, these would all fill up like lakes, and just to have a thing like this with regular walls shaped around it, that would hold in the water, and as I've outlined underneath it, all the curves,
all the lines going to it, all the lines go into it. You don't even you can see it without your line drawings. You can see all these lines running evenly toward it and everything. And if you look at that image. Turn it, if you were to turn it upright, well, that might be upright to you, but if you turn it sideways, I swear I see a half profile of a face, or it reminds me of some type of Sumerian figurine of someone holding a baby upside down or something. But I'm not saying that's what it is.
Doesn't it?
It's definitely artistic, and the hyperbolas are there to show that art. That's what I was saying, Greg. Thank you for hitting it on the head. And on that note, people, we're going to go to a break real quick. Then we're going to come back. We'll continue from this image, but I think we should go to his website, and because he wants to go down a list. So the impact when you walk away this night. You will know the Martian revelations upon you all now. Please mute your mic. Greg, till we get back. All right, bye.
I'll be back.
Don't run. We are your friends.
The LNM Radio Network is making big changes to give you the best talk radio on the airwaves with a great lineup on Studio A and the addition of Studio B in the coming week. We will also be launching a brand new website where you can find all your favorite talk shows and a library of archives as far as the eye can see and the ear can hear. That being said, please bear with us as we make this transition. Go on over to www.lnmradionetwork.com and remember, we cover everything.
Attention, everyone. One.
Monday through Friday, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Michael Vero brings you Late Night in the Midlands with the best guests, the best information, bringing you the truth every day of the week. Only at LNM Radio Network.
Welcome back, everybody. This is Gary Lachey, your host, the Mars Revealer, known also as the Mad Martian. A little mad this night, but feeling a lot better now because, I feel like I got someone, down to Mars with me here that can, kind of relate to the concepts of my madness of what I see on Mars. And I'm talking about Greg Orme. And you're listening to www.lnmradionetwork.com. Again, please click subscribe and please help donate to the network. And that which will help the network to help you, to protect you with the shield of faith and power. Again, the shield either offends you or it defends you. Which side do you want to be on? Because I know, one thing, if you're going to be on the wrong side of the shield, someone get knocked down and it ain't the guy behind it. That's all I'm going to say. We might have our trip and falls through the battles to make things right in the world of darkness. But you know what? That L&M is going to be here for the future and on this alternate new timeline that we are on now. Again, I want to give out something too called the timeline. We got a good name for the phone and it matches perfectly. 202-559-7943. 202-559-7943. If you want to call and ask Greg Orme a question, but or you can wait a little while whenever he's ready. If he's not, because I think we're going to get into his website there and start going through what he wants to get into. But go back to, again, www.thefacesofmars.com, everybody. Scroll on down, check out those images we were talking about. And they had the locations on those images, too. So that's pretty good. It was giving out samples here from Greg for us to check out. Because, to me, these were the most astounding catching my eye, and there's also a couple others, but that would really fill up the page. So what Greg wants to do is basically take us off on this adventure through time on the Martian Revelation. Welcome back, Greg. You with us?
Yes, Gary. Yeah.
All right.
Well, what I thought we'd do, I thought just to finish off, there's one more photo on the facesofmars.com. We could have a look at that and then go to
All right, excellent, sir.
.org. But that was that big hyperbola. You remember that one? The one that goes around the crater?
Yes. Which we also have on the facesofmars.com being seen. Am I correct? Under that main image that I think you're leading us to see.
Yes. Well, how this was found is in itself interesting because, see, originally Tom Van Flandern, probably in the 90s, he came up with this theory that the Cydonia face was actually built on the equator of Mars at the time. And the reason he thought that was that he knew a planetary scientist named Schultz, who said that the south pole of Mars used to be a few hundred kilometers west.
Was that Charles Schultz?
I'm not sure of his first name, but he worked out that the south pole of Mars used to be a few hundred kilometers west of Hellas crater. That's that big crater on Mars. You probably know that one. Basically, the poles of Mars moved, and so the south pole moved to where it is now. And so Tom came up with this idea that the equator used to be in a different place, and that for some reason they built this face to represent being on the equator, which was an interesting hypothesis, but at that point, it was just an idea. And after that, I found the crown face. And so I drew a line between the crown face and the Cydonia face. And I thought, well, if anything else comes up on that line, then it's going to look more like an equator trying to represent an equator. And then later, J.P. Levasseur, you've probably heard of him, he found the Nefertiti face. Uh-huh. And if you draw a line between the three of them, it forms a perfect equator on Mars, and it cuts Mars exactly in half. So it's very unlikely that those three main faces, which were the three main faces that were found at that time, all just happened to be in a perfect straight line, see? And just formed this equator. I
found two faces, and get this before you continue. I think you'll get a kick out of this, Greg. At 19.5, a pyramid, what I call a face pyramid. It's on a mound like the Cydonia face. Now, on the same parallel, all right, on the same, but going east and west, There's another one.
Oh,
Not
right.
looking the same. They're both in similar sizes, and they're both interesting. And I said, you know what? I did that myself, just because I had seen that I already had it marked in the area of where I found this. I was like, so I zoomed out. I said, oh, lo and behold, check that out. So, I checked it with the line tool and the measurements and all that. I won't get into that here now. That's for another show. But it was spot on.
Well,
so what you're saying is not far-fetched. These things connect to each other.
Well, those things that you found too, they all could be part of a global system of like latitude and longitudinal lines, This is just a theory at this point, And so when they were mapping out Mars, they might have put these things all along the equator and then in straight lines and
on other positions or angles, right? Like the hyperbolas are not all in the same positions or angles.
Yes. Well, this hyperbola here, it's only about 26 kilometers off that straight line between the three faces.
I need English, my friend.
Sorry. It's about 40 miles from that equator line.
Wow.
So it's almost exactly on that same line, see? And the interesting thing about a hyperbola is if something is coming into the solar system, like recently there was that large asteroid, long cigar-shaped asteroid that came into the solar system. People probably remember reading about that. Yeah. When that came into the solar system and then went out again, that forms what you call a hyperbolic orbit. And this line that you see here
and
is
it was
slingshotting.
It was slingshotting too.
Yes.
And therefore, we do the same thing upon slingshotting around. This is, I guess, even not just a geometric tool of engineering structure, but of physics itself. Is that true, sir?
Yes, that's right. Yeah, and so this image here can represent something coming from outside the solar system, and then the crater, because it touches the crater so accurately without the ridge that forms a hyperbola, it doesn't actually collapse into the crater. So this can represent Mars, or this can represent the orbit of Mars or something. So this can also be an astronomical picture, see, which is only a hypothesis, of course, But you notice on the left,
a history of the solar system.
Yeah, it touches another small
globally.
Yeah, and it curves a little around that second small crater, and that's almost a slingshotting effect like you're talking about, that it curves around that second planet. But the point I'm making here is mainly that it's too accurate a hyperbola to form by chance, because if you look at the picture underneath it, I've put a hyperbola.
I know. I mean, listeners, look at these images. Look at these images, people, on the facesofmars.com. He is so, and I'm going to admit this, Greg, you are so fascinated with these damn hyperbolas. And I'm like, Greg, what about all the crap under it? Oh my God. Never mind the hyperbolas. Just the features themselves look artificial, like the rooms, what you would term the rooms and stuff like that. It reminds me of Mesoamerican type cities or carving or even ruins found in Iran and, and all that.
Yeah. Well,
to
like
me,
I
that's
said,
fascinating. You're seeing the math, and that's great that you see it, because I see it as the art. But that explains it a little more and helps me. And it doesn't disagree with my theory.
Well, I'm trying to prove artificiality first. See, once you prove that something is artificial, then all these other features near it are more likely to be artificial too. And if you look at this image where I've drawn the hyperbola on top, and you look at the deviation of the ridge underneath it that forms the hyperbola, it's only about a pixel or two difference between it. So the actual deviation is only like meters or yards. But this whole thing is about 12 miles long. So the chances of this forming, I really believe it's impossible to form naturally. And also for it to happen to have formed on this Martian equator that I found by these three faces being on the equator. And this
How
hyperbola
far is the degree off? What's the degree tilt of, if that makes sense, from the old equator to the new?
It's probably about 30 degrees of latitude, I'd say.
Huh.
Yeah. So the probably what happened is at the time there would have been oceans on Mars in around Elysium Planitia, and you probably know those areas. That
might put the face also in an upright position at that at that position. Yeah. It's pretty damn close.
Yeah, and as Mars froze, the atmosphere also froze and went to the poles, and that caused the oceans basically to boil, or what they call sublimate, and they went to the poles as well, and that unbalanced the whole of Mars because all of a sudden there was all these big empty areas where the ocean used to be, and that caused the poles to move, and so that's why the poles are where they are now. So if we could possibly terraform Mars and bring the ocean back, so all the water frozen at the poles could go back to these empty areas, then the poles would probably move again. See.
Total Recall, melt the ice caps. We need that alien hand.
Yes. So I thought we should look at this hyperbola because I really don't think there's any possible explanation as to how such a precise geometric figure would appear on Mars. And a lot of people, they say they're looking for geometric evidence. You know, you find faces on Mars, and it's not really what they want. You know,
I know, because it's not like looking at a mirror. It's nothing like that. Remember, again, Carl Sagan was right. How would you look for an intelligence on Mars? Even in the faces, he was giving us the clue. You look for the geometry, stupids. And obviously, and that's what you see by your education and knowledge, and that's what's helping you to show us not just what we might see as these features as being like rooms or ancient walls and stuff, obvious artificiality. You're seeing the math. I'm seeing the art.
Well, I'm trying to
see the art. You're seeing them, right. And in order to do that, well, you need math in order to do that by the designing, right? You described it yourself because it's used in construction.
And even if people aren't convinced by this hyperbola, there's actually a second hyperbola that I show in the books, and I'll show that on altor.org, and it also fits perfectly with a drawn hyperbola on the top, you know. So there's actually two of them, and when you draw lines between the two hyperbola and the crown face, it forms an isosceles triangle, you know. And then if you draw a line, and if you draw a line from the top hyperbola over to Nefertiti, that forms a right angle with the equator. So it starts to form something similar to a latitude and longitudinal system. And all these things are very hard to explain, you know, by chance, you know, because this hyperbola could have gone off randomly in all kinds of directions if it was just formed by random geology, you know.
Well, no, because it wouldn't be making perfect hyperbolas. They all would not be. They all would not be. They vary in sizes, but like the one we just went the one we just went over a little bit ago. That one, different, you know, it's shaped in different positions and angles, but they're all consistent mathematically as a perfect hyperbola. How you can't explain that. Nature just does not do that. You know.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
We're all monkeys in a classroom.
That's what I'm saying about falsification. You know, that's Karl Popper in Science that says you can't prove that something is positive because you accumulate evidence, and all might be true. But if you can prove that something is impossible, then it's something completely different. And this is what I'm saying. I believe this is impossible. And also because it's coming up against the side of that crater. The crater can be said to represent Mars. And the fact that this is on the old Martian equator, those three
and what came first? And what came first? The equator or the hyperbola?
Yes, the chicken or the egg.
Because they're fused.
Yes. Anyway, I thought we should look at that first, and now we could go to altor.org if you want, and then have a look at some...
Lead on, sir. I'm having fun. Hopefully the listeners are. You know, I mean, these are very interesting and very implicating imagery. And keep rocking, sir. Go ahead, lead the bus.
Okay, if you look at the first image that I've got there on altor.org, I'm comparing this new face I found called the Queen face. And this is why I call the crown face the king face now, because it appears to be more feminine than the other one. But that could be, we have no idea whether these Martians, if they existed, had sexes or not. But
I still can't see how you see a queen.
It seems natural.
I see artificiality. Don't get me wrong. I see the art. You know my position. Here's what I see. I'm seeing like a crescent moon, but also you ladies out there, don't get offended. I'm seeing a clitoris and a vagina. Hey, I'm sorry, Greg, but I'll do the line tracing tomorrow and show you. You'll see at least where I'm coming from and why. And the face that I see, it's actually inside the labias as it was that the crescent moon pictures people draw, like with it grinning or smoking a cigar. It reminds me of something like that just by the image I'm looking at now. That's just me. With faces, I'm not trying to detract from what you're saying it is.
Well, this is the problem in trying to prove
the beauty, right? That's the beauty with looking at Mars. So many people see different things, but here's the thing: when more people that are looking at it, 1 out of the 3 or 4 might say they don't see nothing. The rest will say they see something. Therefore, something's there, and they're missing the tools like what you got. Because I could swear, I'm not going to say anything. Are there any little hyperbolas in that image?
No, nothing really, but you've got the Nefertiti face that's a sun face there, and then you've got the crown face, and then you've got this one, and they've all got crowns, at least as far as what I can see. And so
I don't see the Nefertiti face on the top image. It's the two, like I said, it's the two, and then now I see Nefertiti. It's in the right corner of that image. I'm sorry, everybody. Didn't mean to detract. I had something blocking it.
So the hypothesis here is that these are all basically the same creature or related, So if these really are Martians from the time, then they had faces like us, And the possibility is that see, it's already been proven that meteors could come from Mars to Earth and from Earth to Mars, and they could scoop up enough organic material to transfer things like algae and lichen, which is like a kind of a slime on rocks, and they could transfer that in between those two planets. So it's conceivable that enough genetic material could have come from Mars to Earth, so that our DNA is basically the same as what it was on Mars. And
well, we do know that our bodies' time clocks are more attuned than Mars than Earth, believe it or not. But we got a question from Mean Green. Ask Greg if you found that hyperbolic signature with the crown face.
No, there's no hyperbolas near there, and no parabolas. Some people have suggested that,
or in the designing of the face, like you and I talked privately about. Could it be embedded within the designing of that king face? That's what I'd like to know, because I think that would show the signature a lot. Because if Mars is globally sculpted on a hyperbolic geometry, art, technology as it was, I mean, you could probably come up with a better term than I, sir. But if you're getting the drift, it would also be embedded within its structures, including faces, and I'll say pyramids and hillsides and riverways and anywhere else.
Well, it could be, because we're only really seeing a flat image. But if we actually went there, it's quite possible that the curves that are built into it, when you start looking at the elevation of it, might be parabolic, because that would be much stronger to build that way. But some people have suggested that the distance between the eyes and the mouth relate to what's called the golden mean, because in people, the distance between the eyes and the mouth and the sizes of the nose and things, that's related to what you call Fibonacci geometry, which is the golden mean. For example, Leonardo da Vinci used to design faces and the distances between things that are related to this thing called the golden mean, So that is potentially a sign of being constructed or an organic creature, but again, that's very hard to prove.
Right, like the Egyptian statues, and like Chris Dunn, that on the faces of many of those statues, they're so precise. It's evidence of obvious machining and even possibly laser etching as well, laser carving, because it's positioned beyond what any human hand, even very skilled, could come up with. That's what did you say, the Fibonacci, what?
Fibonacci numbers, they call
Right,
it.
right. It's the Fibonacci aspect, and I remember that. So yeah, of course, and that was again circles and hyperbolas. Well, they turned out to be right as well. I'm sure you've seen those videos of those tests, right?
Well, yes. The interesting thing about Fibonacci numbers is when you look at a plant, the way that the branches occur, they form this sequence called the Fibonacci numbers. So you might have like the trunk of a tree, for example, is number 1.
I got several in the backyard.
Yes. Well, it'll branch into 2, and then it'll branch into 3, and then it'll jump to 5 branches, and then it'll jump to 8 branches, then 13, 21, 33, 55, 89. And it follows this exact mathematical pattern, and it's called Fibonacci numbers, and this is how plants actually form themselves. And the interesting thing, I've got a paper that's on the Altor site. You can scroll down and they can find it. And I talk about the fern formations on Mars, and they look exactly like plants and like 5 different species of plants. And what NASA says is that these things are actually ancient river systems that the ground basically eroded around them, and then they were sort of left there. And they look like plants, but they're actually old rivers. But the thing is, if you follow the branches, in which I did in a paper, they form exact Fibonacci relationships, and they're not formed randomly. So they form exactly like a real plant, and you can actually outline these various branches and show the mathematical relationships. So if someone was making like giant pictures of plants, then they would, without even realizing it, prove they were artificial because they had to follow a mathematical pattern that plants use. And the other interesting thing about the fern formation is it's right next to this hyperbola. So it's on this
it makes you wonder, people, if nature is a creation or just evolution. Because, like you just said, that's an intelligence. You just heard him. I mean, that's what I get out of it, but up to your own people. Anyway, go ahead. I just found that interesting.
Yeah. Well, we can move to the next picture. You'll go through a few videos that I've got there, but the next one I've got down there is a square mesa. This is one that you like. I
call it an old-faced pyramid. I call it an old-faced pyramid. But that's me. It shares consistencies like the face of Cydonia has applied to it, but it's a different shape. Again, it doesn't have to look the same, and it is kind of facial, and it is definitely a pyramid. But that's my assessment.
My hypothesis here is that this whole area used to be part of the ancient Martian Ocean, and that it might have been very shallow here, maybe only a few yards in depth, and that the sides of this are basically put together with rock and cement, or that remains to be proven what it is, and they're pushed up, and then the dirt that's in the middle, it's like a created island, So this was possibly, all this area was possibly just like created islands in the ocean. And there's quite a lot of formations in this area that have got the same kinds of walls around them. And I've got a link there to a paper I published about this that shows many, many islands like this that also have these walls around them, Again, it's very hard to prove it's artificial, but it does look very artificial, doesn't it,
Well, it's a buildup of much, I would say, better than circumstantial evidences. Preponderance of evidence, that's a better word.
Yeah. If you look at how flat the ground is around it, it's easy to imagine it as being an ocean floor,
Right, and especially with the angled pics there, people might be able to see that idea better, and that we're looking at right there, because you have a perspective image there. I don't see a full face-on view, but either way, it's still interesting. Definitely. And how big is that thing again? I think that's like what, at least 2 miles wide by 2 miles, 2.5 or something like that, maybe bigger.
Something like that. But the other interesting thing about it is, if this is artificial and it remains to be proven, it's also starting to get a bit of an insight into what this possible Martian civilization was about. If they were building like pyramids, or if they were building like islands in shallow parts of the ocean, then it starts to indicate, well, they might have lived on the water, which implies they might have like eaten fish, and
they might have swam under the water.
yes, they might have. Yeah, they might have been that sort of thing. Yeah.
So thinks that's possible.
Yeah. So it's important not just to think, well, here's a face, and is it a face, and here's a hyperbola. But if you start to get an overall picture of what this possible civilization might have been like, and once you start to look at where they might have lived, then it starts to flesh out the whole hypothesis a bit more clearly, you know. But anyway, that's what that is. This next one that is pretty amazing. The roof peeled off a hollow hill, I call this. And there's a lot of hills that might be habitats on Mars, and you can see in their roof where the roof is partially collapsed. And you recently found that triangle shape, for example, where it's got like pillars inside it, and it's possible that it had a roof on it at one point. Now this one, this is actually not that far away.
Yeah, but Greg, it also has a risen circle dome in the center of it, or near the top center of it.
Yeah. Well,
how would that get there?
The theory of what I'm saying is there might have been a roof over the top of it, and that was like holding the roof up, you know.
And it collapsed down or just dissipated over time. A lot of heavy metal rust, remember? But people look at that look at that thing. Look at it closely, because you're talking about, what do you mean peeling back? Look at the image closely. You will see a hyperbola curve, which is the flip of it flipping back. I'm taking the words out of your mouth. Go ahead, sir. I'm sorry. It's very interesting. Let's just say that.
Well, the thing is, these things are supposed to be ancient volcanoes or large rocks that are sticking out of the ground, or what they call mud volcanoes. But the thing is, they have to be solid rock. There's another thing, which is sometimes there can be like an ice core that melted out and they can be hollow. But the thing is that this, it's quite obvious you can see it. Well, I believe you can see it. It's like the roof peeled off, like opening a can of sardines, and it's flipped over to the right. And this might have happened like with tidal wave or gale force winds, and it's basically like it's ripped off part of the roof, you know. And as I show in the image, in the bottom part of the image where I've got the letters, if you look at the shape, and I've got CFED, which shows that the peeled part, if you could put that back down and you go back to ABCF, it would fit perfectly.
It should match the edging. It should match the edging of where it ripped up from, is what you're saying. Pretty much. Yeah.
So you've got this thing that looks like it's just flipped off and folded over back on the rest of the roof, and you can see the exact shape where it came from. And like, what are the chances of that happening? So if this was a natural formation and this was hollow inside and just happened to have this roof that was so flexible it could flip off like that, then it's all very convenient again. And, you know, like we might go to Mars and find these hollow hills like this that we could just like form a colony inside, and, you know, it's all very convenient.
Do you think it's possible, Greg? They designed it to look that way. I don't think it's a roof, but it might be. I could clearly see why, because that's what it does look like. If any of you people have lived in Florida, other places where massive storms have hit, well, you would know what you're looking at. You know, it's hard to not recognize it if you've seen it.
Yes. Well, the thing is that Mars always had a lot of meteors, and so they might have built these large sort of habitats where the roofs were very strong to handle a meteor impact, and it might have been safer to live in something like that, you know, rather than smaller buildings, you know. But that's all a speculation again. But the thing is, what I'm saying is here.
We freely speculate on this show.
Well, I don't believe this can be natural. Is the point I'm making, you know, because you can't have a roof form over something hollow like this, and then it just peels off like opening a can of sardines, or you can imagine like it's like the sheet on a bed, you know. It's just flipped over, you know. So
and
anyway,
that curve is the hyperbola, ain't it? The curving of the flip.
Yeah, it can be. I haven't measured it.
It looks like a small one. It looks like a small one, but it looks like the fold. That's what I see. I see it at the art. And, you know, I've seen ones that you've already shown, again, to where I can see it without your line tracing, and I'm seeing that here as that fold point. It looks pretty damn good to me. You're the mathematician, you can confirm that or just slam it down. But I think it's interesting. It's in your face, pun intended.
Yes. The next image is interesting. I call it Walls and Rooms on Mars. And You can see
which
the top.
Which the top left one was the one we seen on the facesofmars.com, but there's more added imagery here added to this image. Correct, sir?
Yes. It's a pretty amazing image, on the left.
Oh, it is.
But these other ones, as you can see, they also look like rooms or walls. And again, if these things are natural, it all becomes very convenient again. Like, first of all, we've got these wall fields that nature is supposed to have just naturally, with random geology, just created these fields that we could grow things in.
Right, random
and
geology that creates these things. You just said it. Random geology, not random geometry. Because that's what this is showing.
And now in these other pictures,
this is screaming at us, Greg and everyone. Geometry.
Yes. Well, if random geology would just create these structures here, see, we could also form colonies here, because these rooms that, like the bottom left-hand picture, for example, these rooms are only like about 10 to 20 yards on a side. So you've got the area in a room would be like 400 square yards, for example, and we could go there and we could just put a roof on these things. We can build concrete, like locally it's been proven that we can get. Yes, and so we could just build on these square-like walls, And if you look between
go there, get there first, and dig in.
Yeah.
Notice how I said we go there first.
Yes. And if you look between C and F in that image, it's like some of these, the roofs might still be intact, because there's
right. You can
a
faintly see the wall line under it, but you can't as clearly like the other ones that have no covering. Right.
Yes. So we might even go there and we find that there's rooms under this, that there's actually intact rooms, and we could form a colony there and we could just move in, And it's the same on the picture on the right, on the bottom right. We've got square walls that are just looking like, we could just put a roof on top. But if you go further up, there's areas where you can see the walls underneath the ceilings, and there might be intact ceilings there. And it's the same with the picture on the top right, So all these things are very convenient if they're natural. It's just like someone has just, like nature has just created all these walled fields and faces on Mars and places where we could just move into. And
we got to stop saying that, because I think your work shows you, sir. Like someone told me to stop saying I don't know, and it's a habit, but he's right. It's the same thing, because it takes away from yourself, from your own words, instead of being raw, who you are, and by your own evidences, I think you can freely say, you're seeing artificiality. We cannot pussyfoot for people anymore.
Well, I'm trying to prove it, see, Gary. I'm trying to say, well, as a scientist,
they want to tell us, gospel natural means, but yet, despite their own eyes and analytical prowess, that's the battle we're trying to overcome here, and this is incredible. But go ahead. So I know, unless we want to go to a break, or do you want to go to something else before we go to the break?
I'm fine. We can keep going. All
right, excellent. But all right, people, check out that image on Alt. Let me read that. ultor.org. ultor.org. And check out that picture, the walls and rooms on Mars, just under the roof peeled off of Hollow Hill. And I don't know, again, pack them and smoke them and look at the images. Then you will see it. And that's not meant to be a pun or a joke. It's a science fact. All right, people, stay tuned. We shall be back.
I'll be back.
Don't run. We are your friends.
Imagine that everything the U.S. government has told you about UFOs since Roswell has been a lie. Imagine that in a decade after Roswell, the government attempted communication with the aliens and succeeded. And after that, in absolute secrecy, things had gone far beyond this. Now imagine that tomorrow, the whole secret program is going to fall apart, and every terrible thing is going to come out. All we have left now is a prayer. Morning Star Pass, the collapse of the UFO cover-up. A fictional but unflinching and terrifying look inside the UFO cover-up, the secret government that supports it, and the world of the aliens themselves, and then how the whole secret kingdom ends. Morning Star Pass, a book that pulls no punches and does not sheath the sword unblooded. Morning Star Pass, plunging boldly where no other book has ventured, captures the whole wondrous nightmare that the UFO experience has become, from bizarre experiments performed on helpless abductees to horrifying mutilations, to beyond, to the world of secret government supported by its own secret police, to the aliens in their secret bases, and finally to the beckoning stars themselves. The book does this by placing the cover-up, humanity, and the Earth in a real cosmos where humanity and its passions are a part of the universe, not an aberration on it. Then comes the fall of the cover-up, and a climax of violence and desperation to leave the human race facing the multi-hued stars with eyes open and seeking its place in them. The sands of time have run out for the cover-up, for against it, leading an army of investigators and warriors, comes Cassandra Chen, beautiful, driven, and doomed. Who can save her and us? Haha, you'll have to read it to find out. Morning Star Pass, The Collapse of the UFO Cover-Up by Victor Norgard. Get yours today. You can find this at www.firstbooks.com.
Welcome back, everybody. This is Gary Lashia, your host of Mars Reveal, and known also as the Mad Martian. You're listening to the Martian Revelation. That's upon you all now. And we're with our guest, Greg Orme, having a very interesting conversation. The hyperbolas, hyperbolic geometry, technology, whatever, all over. Using this as a means, as well as the physics. It's a physics. But being used as a means to create works of art, Mars is big or small. There's still a giant planetary work of art. But is it his handiwork seen in the heavens, or is it someone else's? You see, many dimensions fall in the realms of the Martian Revelation, to which we will abide down through time on. So, Greg, you still with us?
Yes, I'm here, yeah.
Excellent. So continue steering the bus, sir, because I know we didn't get into nowhere near enough where you want to go. And believe it or not, we only have like 45 minutes left. I can't believe this,
Yes.
But hopefully you'll be on again in the future. This breaks the ice between us, and let's get to know each other more as well as the audience. So I'm having fun. Hopefully you think it's viable and you're having a good time yourself, sir.
Well, I think it all remains to be proven, but I believe this is very strong evidence, and I really don't see how these things can form naturally. If you go to the next picture, I've got two hyperbolic shaped formations on Mars, it's called. It's further down the page. And the first hyperbola I showed on your website, and this is a second hyperbola. And you see that there's four pictures, and the two at the bottom are a different hyperbola.
And it's titled Two Hyperbolic Shaped Formations on Mars. Am I at the right image?
That's right, yeah.
Okay.
So the bottom image is another hyperbola. So there's two large hyperbolas on Mars.
You can see that.
And, yes. And I've drawn the same. This is the same hyperbola from the first hyperbola. So basically, I just downloaded a mathematical drawing of a hyperbola, and it fits on the first one, and now it fits on the second one.
Wait a minute. You downloaded the image that already had the lines drawn on it?
No. The drawn lines come from a mathematical website, and basically
really?
I just downloaded the image, and I overlaid it on top of the hyperbolas. Yeah, so I didn't make up this hyperbolic. Wait a minute.
So you showed it. All right. So you shown this website this image, and it used its knowledge and drew the lines on there for you.
No.
Was it sees it?
Well, it was a mathematics website, and they were showing all these different geometric shapes. They show parabolas and circles and ellipses and hyperbolas, and I just downloaded.
You wanted to match it. I see.
And I downloaded a picture that they had of a hyperbola, and I overlaid that on top. So it's not me drawing a hyperbola. They'd already drawn the hyperbola first.
I get it now.
Mathematical website, see? And then I overlaid it on it, and I had to stretch it to the side a bit to make it fit. But that's that's allowed with hyperbolas because they can be any different width. And
it's like taking a straight stick, being able to bend it, and you bend it before the breaking point. That's the strongest strength.
Well, yeah.
Like
if you're
a
bending
cane.
a stick, I believe that would be a parabola if you're bending a stick, but I'm not sure. I'd have to check that. But
or like those tent poles that they sell with tents now, you could bend them like that to make the hyperbola, and that's actually what you have to make to cover the tents that the tent body connects to. That gives us the strength to set up a tent.
Yes, I'm not sure what curve that would be. It might be what catenary, which is related to a parabola. But anyway, they're all very strongly related to each other, and it's like I was saying, they use parabolas in engineering, but they also use a related curve called a catenary in engineering, which is related to a parabola. And if you look at a bridge, like a suspension bridge, and like the San Francisco Bridge, for example, and here you've got the chains that hang down in a curve.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
On the Golden Bridge, for example, that's called a catenary, which is what they call a hyperbolic version of a parabola, and that's also the strongest thing. So you can have a parabolic arch under a bridge, which is the strongest curve for that, and then related to a parabola is this catenary, which hangs down, and that's a special kind of curve as well. So they're all related. All these curves are related and used in engineering. Another interesting point in this image is, I don't know if you can see on the bottom left, but on the bottom right, I've drawn a straight line there that's at an angle.
Okay. Yes.
On the actual image, there's actually a dark line there that I've drawn it on, and it's like that. There's a dark line that goes straight along there, and it's nearly perfectly straight. So that's also unlikely to happen by chance.
I agree.
For some reason, I've just drawn a straight line there, you know. So anyway, that's the hyperbola. So there's two hyperbolas, and if you draw a line between these two hyperbolas and the crown face, you get what's called an isosceles triangle, where the two sides are equal in length, you know.
Right.
So again, that's unlikely to happen by chance. The next picture you probably know, this is called the high face. I called it the Gary face because I said it looked like you.
Yeah, the high face. He does look burnt, doesn't he? No, but that's very interesting, though. It's very interesting.
Yeah.
How big is that?
Face, and again, well, this is actually not that big, you know, and it was pretty hard to find. I think it's probably only like about 50 meters long, something like that. It's actually pretty small. And I called it the high face because it was right up on the top of this cliff, and if you were standing at the bottom of the valley, you would look up and you'd see it, you know. So it's not about being high, but I don't know, maybe it is. But anyway, it's quite an interesting face. But you run into the same problem like with the other faces, like how can you prove that a face is artificial? But this is actually very close to the king face, you know.
Right.
And
in proximity, right, more preponderance. And there's also features, again, the relief helps give it away. You can see the lines, you can trace them. If you're an artist and you have the means, do it, because it's going to reveal even more. And it's going to reveal other geometry, pyramidal type geometry in it, and where that nose would be, as it was, for example, just above the crow of the mouth there. That looks, to me, I see, you know, and not to mention curves and the relief. Again, it's like pewter, like like when you go into the stores, you see the pewter art, beautifully ornate, beautifully carved. That's what Mars is. Yeah. And it's all, it's with hyperbolic geometry and other geometries as well, obviously. But that's the beauty of it and the weirdness of it and the higher than human aspect, in my opinion. But go ahead, sir.
The eyes really stand out as well. You know, I find the eyes quite fascinating in that one. But,
yeah, it's like most of the way closed, squinting open.
Yeah, and the picture underneath it, this is another face in the Kings Valley. This is the like the purpley one. Maybe it's not that easy to see. In other parts, I have a link further down to a paper I published on the Kings Valley, and I actually outline these things and show them more easily. But there's a large circle there that's sort of like bluey purple, and that looks like it was a crater, like there was an impact there, and it obscured part of the face. But if you look to the right of that,
or it could be just how they chiseled it out, because I'm seeing again and when you call a crater there, I'm seeing the pattern. I'm seeing the scales of the snake as it was. That's another thing I wanted to say to you, like the scales of a snake, and like remember I was telling you about the spider web on top of a spider web with a picture within a picture and a picture. I'm seeing the designing on that. I'm seeing the lines. That's not a crater. Whatever it was sculpted and made to look like that. But go ahead, sir. I can see it right now. It just took a minute. You got to adjust, people. Pack them and smoke them. You'll see what I'm talking about, people. Tell me I'm not.
Well, the thing is, too, it's interesting, like, if it is artificial, it's giving us more of an insight into what they look like, because this one also has a crown on its head. So the high face had a crown on its head. The king face has got a crown on its head. The queen face has a crown on its head. And Nefertiti had a crown on its head. So nearly all of them are all Well, we see him as a crown. It may have been just a normal kind of hat to them, you know. Well, that's the hypothesis anyway. But if you look at above that, just towards the top of the image, there's actually another face that's looking to the left.
In the black and white area?
Yeah, in the black and white section.
There's the black and white section, okay. It's interesting there, too. The whole scape is carved.
Yes. There's incredible the things that are there. But again, this is right next to the crown face again. So you've got this high face, you've got the crown face or the king face, and then you've got this face again, and then you've got a small face above it, and they're all in the same valley within like a few kilometers of each other. And why are they all concentrated like that if they're natural, you know?
Yeah, exactly. And and if you find other ones around the planet, they don't have to be too close as long as you see the signatures. And I see the signatures all over this. And it's hard to make out one particular picture because it's all a picture. Every piece that's carved is all lines continuing on to other features, which makes it where that feature sits in particular is just part of a bigger picture that connects and leads on away from that. That's what I'm seeing. So, but yeah, you could, hone in on various things, but this ain't like pareidolia and this ain't like cloud wisping because this stuff is etched and solid and permanent. So,
yeah, exactly.
So that's the difference. So all we have to do is learn to adjust our mindset. We're trying to teach our brain to see the bigger picture because, people, like you said, they're looking for roads. They're looking for things as we know. This is even beyond that. It's beyond it. And it's beautiful. It's beautiful is what I'm saying. But go ahead, sir. Steer the bus.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Yeah, I couldn't agree more about that. I think the artistic side, there's something in the eye that just seems to think it's beautiful. I think some of these pictures are really beautiful. I completely agree with that. The next picture is interesting. It's a fish sculpture. And virtually everyone sees a fish here looking to the left.
I see one of those angel fishies, those angel goldfishies with the big fins, the flat, beautiful. Either that, people might say orca, but I think it looks more like, one of those beautiful angel goldfish. Because look, even like where the eye is, right behind the eye, that's where you can see the flip of his gill thing.
Yeah,
there.
People immediately see a fish. Virtually everyone sees a fish. And the interesting thing about this is opposite the king face. So basically, if you were in the valley and you look at one side,
it's on the opposite side. Gotcha.
Yeah, it's exactly on the opposite side. So you look at one side, you see a fish, and you look at the other side, you see the king face. But the other interesting thing about this, again, it's hard to prove it's artificial, except that how could something like this just be carved in random rock? But the thing is, it's starting to imply an ecosystem. See, you've got maybe they ate fish, It seems logical because the King's Valley, that I call it here, this was only about 5 kilometers from the edge of the ancient ocean. So the concept is that maybe they ate fish and that they were representing fish sculpted on the walls. And that's very interesting because we can compare those pictures and this fish is so accurate, we can compare it to fossilized fish pictures on Earth and see fish that actually look like it, And
right.
As I said, there was also those ferns that look like large plants, and there's about 5 different possible species there. Now, if that's artificial, that gives us another insight into the old ecosystem because it gives us 5 possible plants that might have existed. So we've got the possible creatures. We've got fish that lived in the oceans that they would have eaten, and then we've got plants that might have been grown on the surface. And all these things are hard to prove, of course, but you start to get a more global image of a whole ecosystem,
Right.
Which is what fascinates me about it, And there's actually 3 other fish sculptures that are in the King's Valley that look like different species of fish. So the next one we go down to a second fish sculpture in the King's Valley, and people usually see this one. It's a fish looking to the right. Can you see that one?
Let me see. What, on the same image of the fish? That there's another one in that image?
No, the next image down, it's called a second fish sculpture in the King's Valley.
I see that. But let me see. Wait, don't point out. I'm not seeing a fish yet. I think I might. Is he looking to the right?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
I don't really see a fish. I could see what someone might say it might be a fish, but I don't know. That needs more study. But it does look artificial, too, because it's carved and it has the snake skin patterning of the art.
Yeah,
that is not normal. That is not wind. That is not rain. That is not water. That is manipulation. That is sculpted artistically.
Yes, exactly. Yes. I go into it more.
Look at the center of it. Look at the center of it. That's very interesting. That should not be there.
It's quite an amazing picture. You know?
Everyone's probably saying, Gary, what the F are you talking about? I don't see nothing. Pack them and smoke them again, people. I'm not joking. That's the way you have to. That helps your brain. It helps your brain and your eye adjust to see something that's right in front of your face. I mean, and then to understand of what you're seeing, the wow of it. The wow of it.
Yes.
Your ball has just been busted.
Yes. And if it is a fish, it's a second species of fish. So we're starting.
That's possible too. Something we may not, right, and something we may not immediately recognize. You brought up a good point.
Yes, this is like a shorter fish, more like a goldfish, I think. You know, it's not long like the other. Yes, yes. And if we go to the next image, I call this a coin face because they used to have triangular-shaped coins in the Roman Empire. But there's a face on this that looks to the right.
What do they call them? Drachmas or something? Or I don't know. I forget.
I don't know what they call them in those days.
But it's definitely a tetrahedral going on there. And I think I see the face you're talking about, looking up to the northwest there, near the edge of the left side. Is that the face I'm seeing?
Well, it's kind of looking to the right. The one I see, it's looking to the right, and yeah.
Well, again, there's bifurcatedness in it. I can see that too. But I'm seeing all that has been chiseled out too. And you could follow the lines. You see, once you people download these images, save them, open them up in a program to which hopefully you have the ability and skills with your mouse to start line tracing over this. And then you tell me how that could be natural. That's all I'm saying, because
it's even good that people can't see things, because it's like a test. You know, when I show a picture and I say there's a face in it and someone else says they can't see a face in it, even someone that's not.
Now I see the face profile looking right. He looks like Lenin. He looks like Lenin wearing a Civil War hat or something. I see the brow, the nose, the chin. Exactly. You see, there's more than by then. That's interesting.
Looks like dreadlocks.
I'm not saying it is a face. I'm not saying it is a face, but that's based on the relief. But if we follow these lines, you got to follow the lines. That's what counts, because then it's going to lead you to other things and say, how the hell is that possible? That's impossible. And then all these impossibilities, and that's the truth of it all, because it's going to go globally on a big artwork. But this is a prime example of that tetrahedral triangular artwork.
Well, this is in the King's Valley as well. So the king face is about 500 yards from here, and the two fish is about 300 or 400 yards from here, and then that other face, the coloured one, it's about 800 yards from here. So they're all in this one tiny little valley, you know, and it's, for some reason it's clustered. And my theory about it is that this might have been like a large artwork sort of place that people came to see all these sculptures, like Mount Rushmore, you know. And that someone had done all these things up and down the valley, and then that people would visit it like a big artwork, you know. But
well, you mentioned Dr. Tom Van Flandert. I had him on years ago a couple of times, and you know, back in those days when you released that king face image, as a matter of fact, and not too long after it, and he stated basically, you know, I think where he might have showed that king face image, where he said that Mars was a big amusement park.
Yes. Well, this is the possibility, and the fact that other faces appeared next to it, and these fish sculptures, it's like that someone decided to just build these things in one place so people could, or what creatures, I guess you'd say, could come and see them all in one place. Yeah, but it's all of that's just a hypothesis. I can't prove that.
Of course. But what we can prove is that something solid there that is, you know, bringing up all these freely speculations. I mean, that's what it's about. You know, we didn't create the damn things, but I think we can learn a lot from it. I think we really can. And to be able to artscape, be able to carve planetary surfaces is an incredible ability and high tech, far beyond what we're capable of.
Well, when you start to connect these things, you start to see what a society would have looked like. Once you've got the concept of an artist who actually carved things on the side of a hill, and then others came to see it, you start to think, well, was it a business? Was it money? Was it a cultural thing? Were they carving gods? Were they carving king and queen? You know, why did they
carving the history of the solar system or beyond, or their history? If we only know how to break this down and see their art and learn how to read it.
Yes, and like I had that square mesa as a possible island that was in this ocean. So you start to build this sort of picture of creatures living on islands and possibly living on fish, and probably either being amphibious or taking boats and then coming to this place that was on the edge of an ocean. And all of that is obviously very hard to prove, but you start to get a concept of what that society might have been like, which is very important, because if it is real, then eventually we're going to have to go there and we're going to have to work all these things out. Archaeologists are going to have to dig up things and look for pottery and look for language and look for tapestries and all kinds of things. And
just not archaeologists like Zahi Hawass. But before you continue your thought, I thought I asked this, but so there are artificial structures. Did you ask Greg if you had found that hyperbolic signature with the crown face? I think I asked you that already, didn't I?
Yeah, you asked me that one. Yeah.
Okay. Just looking out.
No, I've only found that with the two large hyperbolas, and then the parabolas are associated mainly with dams and some roads and things and some buildings. But no, there aren't any actually in this area. But I think it's okay to speculate with these ideas, because at some point you have to start connecting all the dots. You have to say, well, if some things were roads and some things were buildings and some things were fish sculptures and some things were what they look like, how did this society function? You know, because eventually if it's all real, and I believe it is, that people are going to have to go there and they're going to have to work all this out. You know, they might even find like written down manuscripts that would have all anything based on paper obviously would have disappeared a long time ago, but there could be like carved things that give us some insight into language. And I mean, this is only just beginning. You know, I think it's going to be 1,000 years before we really understand what was happening there. You know.
Yeah, well, I don't know. You know, it all depends. You know, the development of another space force. You know, and all that entails in that, and Pence himself stating that we're going to put American boots on the face of Mars. That was his exact words. And everyone's, you know, clapping and waving, you know, and they think that, oh, what? Astronauts? The astronauts all going to come kumbaya, you know, and plant flags? And no, they're going to be bringing them 60s. Never mind astronauts. They're going to be soldiers. Why? He told General Dunford, go get it. Good luck, General. Now go get it. Go get what?
Yes.
So maybe what you're talking about. Get there to get and find out in these rooms all over and places I'm sure they've selected specifically to go, and they named us specifically to face the Mars. So that's our destination.
Well, the
I
thing
must
is,
find that incredible, Greg.
if these rooms are there and some of them that the ceilings are still intact, and some of these hills are hollow, like that one with the peeled off roof, you know, like
there might be some booty.
There might be some hollow structures that are still intact, and that's where you can build colonies. You know, you wouldn't even have to build your own buildings. You know,
or take out what they have inside.
Well, I don't know that it was any much of. There's no indication of any large scale technology there, but
no,
I think it would be.
Greg, are you kidding me? Look at what you're finding. If that's not evidence of a high grade technology, what else is?
Yes, but I don't think it's going to be anything like ray guns or, you know, like computers or something like that. I think we're basically just seeing technology that's just like ancient.
For all we know, they just carved the hell out of this surface and no one lives there. Why?
Either way, it falls back to why. We freely speculate on this show.
Well, if you look at the next picture, it sort of ties a lot of it together. It's called "Could This Be the Sculptor of the King Face?" And this is a small image, and it's opposite the king face as well, and it looks like a guy who's looking up, and he's looking exactly at the king face as it turns out, and it shows his possible arm sticking out. And Face has done a lot of work on this as well. You can see a body that's going down, and you see the face looking to the right.
No, but I do see all the etching of the scale work done. I see all the carving that all over the picture. You can see the fish scales as it was, snake scales.
Yeah.
They scale it, and they use those scales. I know because I'm an artist, and and when you draw scales, you can make scales into anything in the pictures, and it's also helps, especially when it's not flat. Remember, this is relieved with all different shapes and sizes. It can reflect and refract light in different ways, in different positions of sun angles or orbits or times of the year. So we would see other features where we might not see when this particular image was taken. But you can see the scales. Do you see what I mean, Greg?
Yes. Well, it's like he's wearing almost like sunglasses, or it's like there's big things covering his eyes and.
Wait a minute. I think I see now. And is he like looking up? He looks like he's wearing a hood or something.
Yeah. It's like he's wearing a hat or something, or a long hair or something.
That's
and then
different.
you can see the mouth and the chin. Yeah, and he's looking straight at the king face,
Right, and what makes that face is those snake scales I'm talking about.
Yes. And well, for all we know, it could be snake scales. We can't.
Well, I'm not saying it's the scales of a snake, but they use that patterning. They use that
Well,
patterning along with the geometry and along with straight lines. Remember the spider web over a spider web over a spider web over a spider web. Each showing and sharing different things when fused together. What a beautiful piece.
Well, you can't assume that they're mammals. They might have been reptiles. So they could be right there. It could be snake scales easily, So, but it's like he's got an arm on the left, and it's like he's holding something. I don't know if you can see that. It might be like a big hammer or something, which represents a possible tool to carve these things, So, but the thing is, this is in the same valley. This is on the other side of the valley from the king face, and you happen to be a face there that's looking up, and it happens to be holding something that looks like a hammer or something. You don't find this anywhere else. You can go to another valley that's just like 10 kilometers away, and you can look all up and down that valley, and you won't find anything that looks like a face.
Right.
And you can go to all these other. There's plenty of other valleys on Mars, and you can go looking up and down. You won't find any faces, or you might be lucky if you ever found one. But
you'll find the art. You'll find the carving of the art. That's interesting because it's illusionistical. And it acts also as a camouflage, at least with the way NASA always gives us the images and stuff. ESA, Mars Express, kudos to them. They help show the tattoo a little better. And now in modern years, at least where like Cydonia and the face of Cydonia is concerned, in fact, MRO is, validating and vindicating what ESA is showing. And isn't that interesting? Because people will want to say, though, it's lower resolution, but look at the art all over it. Look at these sharp edges, these features. Look, what happened to the sand dunes on the chin? They're not sand dunes at all. You can follow the art and easily see right angles. They were being hidden from us. Why?
Yes.
Well, why did they put a pump on the head?
Well, the thing is I found there's actually 12 faces that I found that some are better than others, or 12 or more in this one small valley, and there's 4 fish sculptors. So, and this is just one tiny valley that's only a few kilometers long. So why are they all concentrated in this one place,
Yeah,
so
notice the Sumerians depictions of the Anunnaki or whoever, wearing the fish suits.
Mm.
And being that they created civilization, they built the pyramids, and the story, at least through the translation through Sitchin, and that would make sense. They're building giant pyramids on this planet, art carving the planetary landscapes to found and build their pyramids on, let alone under. Jeffrey Boyd Jr., that's above, so below, rah. So therefore, again, it's very interesting where all this leads. It's just so fascinating. It makes my brain go crazy. Go ahead, sir.
Anyway, we better keep moving. There's a few more pictures to go, and we're going to run out of time. But the next one is the one that I posted on your website, the 3-room-like partitions. You were pretty impressed with that. It shows, that's the one under the sculptor. It shows like 3 rooms or this is what I'm saying, that one with the roof that peeled off, there might have been a roof that was on this. So this is what they might look like under those roofs, or they might have been pits for fishing or agriculture or something. But there's like a doorway that's on the top right, and it's like you could just walk into these walled areas, and there's actually some entrances with the other rooms as well.
It's beautiful. Yeah. I'm seeing the art all over it. It is spectacular.
And again, it's all very convenient. Like if we're going to Mars, that we didn't have to build these walls, that all we had to do was put a roof on these things that nature just happened to build.
Yeah, we could fit 10,000 people in one of these, I mean, hey, 500,000 and something bigger. And, definitely. That's definitely
Yeah, well, this would be a few hundred yards across. This is fairly big. So if you could put a big dome across this and you've basically got the rooms all laid out for you, So what are the chances that nature could just happen to build these things that could just be used as rooms? And I mean, nature doesn't build cities for us on Earth. We have to build them.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. Go ahead, sir. Yeah. We got a little. Maybe 5 minutes left. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Well, look at this next one that says road-like formations out of hollow hills. So if you look at the hill and you look at the way it's subsided on the top of the roof, it's like it was hollow because it's actually collapsing. So again, there could be rooms inside this, just like the previous image, but also there's a thing that looks like a road that goes straight out of it, And there's almost like
it even looks like it has 2 tracks. It looks like it has 2 tracks that have been ridden on a few times.
Yeah, and it's very smooth by comparison with the rest of the terrain. And I've got some close-ups because a few of these roads go through, possible roads. A few of them go through high-rise images, and we can zoom right down into them, and there's things that look like bricks and cobblestones in them. So, nice. Again, it's all very convenient again. Here you've got these big hills that look like they're hollow that we could just like use as a colony just by using the hollow bits, and we happen to have these roads that come out of them, and they go to these other hills that look like that. And so we had rovers on Mars that we were driving around on. We've already got these roads that we could just drive on, and so it's all very convenient again that nature would just happen to build these hollow things that look like habitats and these smooth roads that we could drive on and hyperbolas and
that road-like formation out of hollow hills.
Impossible,
Yeah, that road-like formation out of hollow hills, that structure to the left there, that reminds me of that triangular feature that everyone is clamoring on. It reminds me of it. It don't look exactly like it, but if you follow the top, go to the top, and it goes into the white. You can follow it too, and it still has the same width of wall like the other side. Do you notice that?
Yes.
It's incredible.
It's very similar. It could even be the same plan. It's the wall is very, very similar, exactly. And where I've got like A at about 12 o'clock going out from A, there's like it's like there was a pillar there which is similar to the pillar that was in the thing that you found.
Yep, and just look to the line going northeast, which obviously from the A, which obviously would go up to where that road would be. But look at the corner of that structure, how perfect it is.
Yeah, exactly. It looks very artificial.
Wow. Hopefully you people are on ultor.com, ultor.com. I mean, ultor.org.
Ultor.org.
Right, there's a big difference. My bad. So anyway, is there anything else you'd like to get out real quick? I'm sorry about the time here, Greg. There will be more shows.
Hundreds of kilometers of those. Okay. Well, the last one, the last picture is the parabolic. That looks like a dam there. See, and these are the kind of dams that are found in craters, and I've overlaid a parabola on it.
Yeah.
Can you see that?
Yep.
Yeah.
And you can follow the line. The line's there.
Yeah.
You can
and
see
this
that.
is this is a picture I've downloaded from a mathematical website again, and this is called a parabola. And this is the one that you use in engineering, and as you can see, it just follows the shape of the dam perfectly.
It follows that curve.
Yes. So, and what I found, about 80% of the dams, and of which there's probably nearly 1,000 or so, are all parabolic like this, you know. And so, again, it's very convenient if they're natural, how nature would just happen to pick the perfect shape that they would use in engineering, you know, to hold water. And usually there's above these dams that there's signs that the water leaked out of the crater walls and just formed these small rivers that would have just filled these dams, you know.
Right.
So an awful lot of coincidences, you know, but I don't believe it's possible for so many to be formed in parabolic shapes, you know.
Oh, definitely not. And I think the listeners to this show that are out there appreciating this, watching it, looking at these images, I think, well, they got to admit to themselves, too, something's wrong here, especially after you pack them and smoke them, people, because you could add to the lines that he put there. I guarantee it. And then how are you going to explain that away if you're coming up with your own preponderance of evidence? Any last words there, Greg? Again, hopefully, you know, you'll be on again in the future.
Well, if we manage to terraform Mars and we manage to thicken up the atmosphere and there was rain again, all these dams would probably fill up with water and they would start functioning again. So
functioning. That's been a concept we've been following on this show. Structure is functioning and functioning again. All right. All right, Greg. Anything else? Any books out there that you have for sale that you might want to plug?
Well, if you go to my site, martians.life, there's 12 books that I've published of all these different formations. There's about 2,800 formations that I've catalogued all up that show all these various things. And there's
are they
12
available
on Amazon.
for sale, or is they listed, or those books available for free for everyone to look at, download and look at?
They're available for sale on Amazon, but there's excerpts from each book, and people can look at all the images. There's about 360 images that they can look at for free on the website martians.life. So that's as much as you'd look in a whole book. So it's probably doubtful whether anyone would need to buy a book, but there's plenty to see there. So I mean, you can just read it and make up your own mind.
And where would they buy your books at? Is it listed on the site where to buy your books?
Yeah, they're all listed there. Excellent. And all the papers that I published on it are all listed as well. So
I'll definitely be interested.
On this.
Right, I'd definitely be interested in getting those books too, to read more in depth, because it fascinates me. And if anything, it's just, you know, helping prove my theory long ago, to where that dark missioner Hoagland years ago also told me, Gary, calm down. It's good science, just not yet. And I was like, what the hell is this guy saying? You know, but everyone went with his flow. You know, now look where we're at. Back down through time. Thanks a lot, Greg, for being on. Greg Orme, everybody. Check out his websites there. Get his books, or at least read through the excerpts, and then, you know, for content from each book, you know, so bam, there's more than enough. If you're not convinced already, even by the pictures on www.thefacesofmars.com or on martians.life or on, what was that one? Ultor, ultor.org. Check it. I don't know what to tell you, because it's all there. And in my art, as an artist, I'm validating what he's seeing, because he's seeing it based on the math and everything. And I see that too, but I call it all art. I'm not a mathematician, but it's naturally, I see it. What I'm seeing is not natural, and nor is Greg Orme seeing naturalness there. He's trying to show and prove artificiality, and that's exactly what it shows, because that's how we detect civilizations anywhere, even on Earth or in another world, is by their geometry. If they're intelligent, they build things. Whether they're spacefaring or not is another issue. To create planetary surfaces like this, you would have to be. But again, Greg, thanks a lot for being on, and we'll talk soon, buddy.
Okay, thanks a lot. Yeah.
All right, you have a good night. So, all right, you listeners out there, indeed, what'd you think? I mean, what do you think? Look at those images. I'm not just talking crap. Again, you can't make this up. It's in the images. but it's so far advanced and it's so immense. You know, people find it hard to see because they're used to seeing and been so entrained and ingrained in their minds that what we're looking at Mars is an Earth-like planet. Think about that some. But until next week, you know, I just got to say this. I prefer to die free. Okay? What about you?
Delta IV Heavy rocket with NASA's Parker Solar Probe, a daring mission to shed light on the mysteries of our closest star, the Sun.
The second time's the charm. NASA's launch of the Parker Solar Probe was postponed from Saturday to Sunday morning, the space agency promoting the mission as one that will touch the sun. NASA plans to send the satellite closer to the sun than ever before to answer unsolved mysteries, assuming it can survive the 1,832-degree heat.
Fox's Ann Carrick. The solar probe making its first pass at the sun this November, with 24 planned over the next 7 years. A statement from the family of an